cover slower sales and rising costs. So will those cheap bottles of grocery store wine disappear?
Everybody's aware that unless there's a really nice entry point into wine, then the category's at risk. But there's plenty of people out there now creating really good value because they've really had no choice. If you're thinking about Bordeaux, for example, yes, the top wines are super expensive and likely to stay that way, but the middle tier is now looking like really good value. And so they're getting recognition for that.
Attracting new customers and holding on to existing ones in an age of health warnings and strong competition from a vast range of alcoholic and non-alcoholic drink options is tough.
Then the wine industry has been losing out to the beer industry and the spirits industry, who have been far more innovative. The other thing that both of those categories have done is find a way to de-alcoholize their product and still have a really good product at the end. And the wine industry is still struggling to get there, but there's a huge amount of effort and focus and research going into that. So I just think that, in terms of connecting with a new audience, the wine industry is significantly undercooked still. I've been spending quite a lot of time in Georgia recently, and there's this concept called tamada, which means sharing emotion, which doesn't really have a full English translation, but it's not just that they get together and enjoy amazing wine and food in each other's company. The Toastmaster lets everybody know why they're there, how much they're appreciated, and why they really matter in the lives of those people around the table, making it more a part of people's lives and making consumption in a sensible way something that more people enjoy doing. And that if it can make the discussion about gastronomy and about enjoying wine and food together and enjoying the celebrations around sharing wine and food, then I think there's a huge future for wine still. So long as there's money in the world, there will be wine drinkers.
So back to our main question. Is it last orders for the wine industry? It's had painful times before, but now multiple domestic and international threats to survival are happening at the same time. Global consumption is decreasing overall, but not everywhere. There's also been a change in buying habits, with people paying more for smaller quantities of quality wine. As for what that might mean for the future of the industry, here's our expert witness, Jane Anson.
The production right now of premium wine, which means maybe the £30 plus wine, it's still profitable. And very quickly, you could go up to 60, 70, £80 bottles of wine. They are still profitable. This is an industry which is not out. It might be struggling right now, but it's definitely not out.
This episode of The Inquiry was written and presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Jill Collins, researcher Evie Yabsley, editor Tom Bigwood, and technical producer Mark Burrows.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio.
Good morning, Manitoba. It is Wednesday, December 17th. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's say hello and good morning to our team. Abby Adiemi is our technical producer. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Corey Funk is our show director. And Heather Wells is here with news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, no more mellow yellow. We are now at orange level. Environment Canada says a blizzard is on the way. The warning covering Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Pembina Valley, Brandon, Parkland, Riding Mountain, and the Interlake. It's a system that starts first in the Parklands before making its way to Winnipeg this evening. Anywhere from 10 to 25 centimeters of snow with very strong wind, creating near zero visibility. Western Manitoba, I should mention, is also under a freezing rain warning, and southeast Manitoba is under a winter storm warning. In the north, Churchill to Dooley Lake, Brochet, all under a cold warning with wind chill values approaching minus 50 through the day and into tomorrow. So it is a big weather story for the entire province today. As well, kids in care are being sent to school in dirty clothes, going missing without anyone calling police. Those are just a few of the concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency placements. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Lots to follow there in the weather. We will keep you updated as the show continues. But also coming up on the show, energy drinks have been making headlines in Canada and around the world, and not for good reasons. Seizures, strokes, and even deaths have been attributed to these beverages. Dr. Raj Bardwaj will join us with the details. And a Churchill polar bear is now a mother of 2 after adopting a cub in the wild. We will hear about how researchers made this discovery. As well, Winnipeg Transit is bringing in some changes just in time for the new winter schedule. Coming up, we will hear from the manager of service development to find out what's changing and how the public played a part. And as you heard Heather say, a Manitoba Child Welfare Agency is raising concerns about what it's seeing in the system's emergency placements. We will have that story still to come on Information Radio.
On cue. I'm just a lonely boy.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. Paul Anka has over 900 songs to his credit. He'll tell you about writing for folks like Buddy Holly and Frank Sinatra, growing up in Ottawa, and releasing new music in his 80s.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hundreds of people sing at the growing memorial on Sydney's Bondi Beach. The mourning for those killed in Sunday's attack during a Hanukkah celebration continues. And today, the suspected shooter is charged with 59 offenses. The 24-year-old is facing more than a dozen counts of murder. Georgie Smythe has more from Sydney.
15 counts of murder, 40 counts of wounding with intent to murder, 1 count of displaying a prohibited terrorist symbol. These are just some of the offences Naveed Akram is facing after being formally charged in hospital while under police guard. Investigators say the terrorist attack was inspired by ISIS. On the same day, the parents of murdered 10-year-old girl Matilda came to the public memorial to place their daughter's shoes among the carpet of flowers and candles. Her father, Michael, says he tried to pull Matilda out of harm's way, but the shooting wouldn't stop.
She was in shock. She was in shock. She was telling me that it's hard to breathe, and I was holding her, and I was like, calm down, please.
Lawmakers will meet early next week to pass new emergency measures to further restrict gun ownership in the state New South Wales. Here's Premier Chris Menz.
We are proposing a bill to cap the number of firearms, to reclassify straight pull-up and pump-action shotguns, to look at reducing magazine capacity for shotguns.
The federal government is expected to follow suit soon. Crime scene tape is slowly coming down around the beachfront, but traditional New Year's celebrations here have been ruled out, and the status of other festive events at the iconic beach is unclear. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
U.S. President Donald Trump is hitting the Maduro regime in Venezuela in new ways. Trump now says he is ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers sailing into the Caribbean country. Let's bring in Willie Lowry from our Washington bureau. Willie, what exactly is Trump threatening to do here?
A lot. President Donald Trump using the might of the U.S. military to attempt to cut Venezuela off from the rest of the world. In a lengthy post on social media, Trump said the country was completely surrounded by what he called the largest armada in the history of South America. Trump also ordered a, quote, total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. He accused the government of being a designated foreign terrorist organization and demanded that it return oil, land, and other assets that he alleges were stolen from the U.S. This appears to be a reference to when Caracas nationalized its oil industry in the mid-1970s. Before then, many U.S. companies operated in the country, which sits on the world's largest oil reserves.
The Trump administration has been putting huge pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro since September. Is this about drug trafficking and oil sanctions, or is the goal here really regime change?
Yeah, this is the latest escalation in a crescendo of hostile actions towards Venezuela that appears to be about all three. Trump has openly mused about regime change, and there is bipartisan dislike of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who the U.S. views as illegitimate. Let's take a listen to Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Republican Lindsey Graham.
If this is about regime change, it seems to me that the administration should say that's what it is and should come to Congress to ask for that authorization.
Maduro is not a legitimate president. If after all this, Maduro is still in power, that's the worst possible signal you could send to Russia, China, Iran.
Maduro, for his part, has made it clear that he does not want a war with the U.S., but has shown little interest in stepping down.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure.
Willie Lowry reporting from Washington. The Trump administration is expanding travel restrictions to an additional 20 countries. That doubles the number of nations affected by efforts to tighten up entry standards into the United States. Citizens from 5 more countries, including South Sudan and Syria, are now fully banned from traveling or emigrating to the U.S., and so are people with documents issued by the Palestinian Authority. Some critics say the restrictions unfairly prevent travel for people from a broad range of countries. The changes take effect January 1. Canada's Secretary of State for Sport, Adam Van Koeverden, is standing behind Skate Canada. The national sport organization says it will no longer host major events in Alberta. It made that decision after the province banned transgender athletes from participating in women's sport.
We believe that a sports system that is rooted in fairness and welcoming and is inclusive for all athletes is the best path forward.
Van Koeverden says all Canadians should have the opportunity to play sports, including those in the transgender community. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says women and girls have the right to play competitive sports in a safe and fair environment against other biological females. Lawyers and advocates say children across Ontario are losing their legal immigration status. These youth have applied under Canada's humanitarian and compassionate immigration pathway, but they face decades-long processing times. And as Priscilla Kisong-Kwong reports, some are becoming undocumented while they wait.
It really hit me like last year.
In his Ottawa home, surrounded by his basketball medals and trophies, John says he couldn't travel with his team to tournaments in the U.S. and can't get his driver's license. Just a toddler when he came to Canada, he's now 16 and undocumented. CBC is protecting John's real name because of deportation risks.
I mean, I couldn't really live the regular teenager life, so I felt like I was behind.
John is waiting for permanent residence under the humanitarian and compassionate stream. But this fall, the wait time ballooned from roughly 2 years to more than a decade because the government slashed its immigration levels to numbers lawyers call unprecedented. Heather Neufeld is an immigration lawyer. She says without status, people can't legally work, study, or access health care.
So instead of being a leader in protecting people, we're going to become just like the U.S. with an underclass of undocumented people.
Liz Okai is with the Child Welfare Immigration Center of Excellence. She wants the federal government to expedite vulnerable youth's applications,
so that they don't spend their entire formative years being in limbo and being in fear and hiding.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says its processing times are transparent and up to date and puts the onus on applicants to request urgent processing. John says he worries for other youth like him.
It's a little heartbreaking, and I hope that it changes a little bit.
Priscilla Kisong-Kwong, CBC News, Ottawa.
Employees at the Louvre Museum will stay on strike. They walked off the job Monday. The unionized workers are protesting chronic understaffing, infrastructure issues, and pay. The strike follows that spectacular jewel heist in October, exposing security failings at the museum. The Louvre is only partially open today. Ticket holders will only be able to see the museum's masterpieces. In Rome, subway construction means digging through 2,000 years of history beneath the city. Now, after more than a decade of work, 2 new stations are opening beside the Colosseum. As Megan Williams tells us, they are turning archaeology into part of Rome's daily commute.
70 years ago, when Rome built its first subway line, engineers plowed straight through ancient rooms lying just beneath the surface of the Eternal City. Newer lines now tunnel far below those layers of history to preserve them. Still, stations have to be built to connect with the underground, and every time construction begins, archaeology resurfaces, adding years of delays and staggering costs. But in the case of the new line at the Colosseum station, across from the ancient amphitheater, also the chance for something unique.
La sfida sicuramente è stata quella di realizzare questa stazione.
Engineer Marco Cervone says the city has pulled off a remarkable challenge, combining archaeology, architecture, and engineering into a global showcase, with the findings here of ancient wells and everyday objects. Hairpins, oil lamps, knives, and statues, all displayed where passengers pass through.
Certo fa impressione.
It's striking to descend through centuries of history on the way to catch a train, says this student.
La stazione è molto bella.
This commuter calls it beautiful.
If only didn't take half a century to do one of these stations, that would be really nice.
The Colosseum station and another are part of a new line that runs through Rome's historic center. The city is hoping the next major stop under construction, just down the avenue from the Colosseum, will be done by 2032. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thank you for joining us this morning. Coming up on the show, the federal government is trying to make it easier for foreign doctors to get permanent residency in Canada. We'll discuss whether these new immigration measures might ease Canada's doctor shortage. Also, a polar bear in Churchill is now a mother of 2. After adopting a cub in the wild. We'll hear how researchers made this discovery. But first, a youth drop-in center is hosting a Christmas Eve feast for the children they serve. We'll hear more about this annual tradition. And we'll have lots to follow in the ways of weather. Get ready for snow, Manitoba. It's now time for news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. If you were hoping for a winter snow shovel for Christmas, you might ask for it a little bit early because you'll need it starting later today. We are under an orange level warning, a blizzard on the way covering Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Pembina Valley, Brandon Parkland, Riding Mountain, the Interlake. It all starts first in the Parklands before hitting Winnipeg this evening. Up to 25 centimeters of snow is possible, along with that very strong wind creating near zero visibility in blowing snow. This morning, western Manitoba also under a freezing rain warning. Southeast Manitoba has a winter storm warning and a cold warning for Churchill to Dooley Lake and Brochet, with wind chill values approaching minus 50. It is a big day weather-wise in Manitoba. And within weeks, 6 young people experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg will soon have a place of their own. The Spence Neighborhood Association has brought in some modular housing units from Altona and has installed them on Sherbrooke and Langside. We'll hear all about it in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Well, Heather, we can't look into the future, but we know a lot of snow is likely to come. What's your go-to way to spend a snow day?
You know what? I'm usually stuck in it. I would prefer to not be.
So no snow days for Heather.
Yeah, I haven't had one in a long time, but yeah, somehow just fate places me right in the middle of it. How about for you?
I love to be inside. I'm an indoors kind of girl in the wintertime. I just cozying up with like a movie and a crochet project and the snow out the window. I'm happy.
That sounds beautiful.
I don't know. Let's ask Abby Adeyemi the same question. Thanks, Heather. Abby, snow day plans for you. What do you like to do?
I just stay indoors and just watch it drop because later I might just go see how deep it feels, how high it gets to the knee level.
Right. So you're going to go for a little A short walk, maybe
just a
after?
short walk, because when the snow comes, it's not really as cold as it used to. It's just the snow that comes. So I just want to feel that fresh snow on the floor and the ground and how high it came.
I like it. All right, so we've been talking about weather. What are we in for?
Well, Mother Nature is definitely throwing a punch today. We're talking about a heavy one, a major winter storm, as we've been hearing, will be hitting the province, and it's already starting in some areas. Conditions will change fast. I'm talking about, let's look at that code orange, for example, for southern Manitoba. Blizzard official for Winnipeg, the Red River Valley region, down to the Westman Interlake region. We're talking about 10 to 20 centimeters of snow slamming us, with also that 90 kilometers of wind gust. It's going to be starting from the Parkland region, and then we will see it come towards us as we get to the evening. Then if you go towards the southeast, you need to talk about that freezing rain that is going to be impacting Brandon and surrounding communities. If you track it towards Bissett, Pine Falls, and the White Shells, we're talking about a winter storm, messy, heavy snow, plus freezing rain coming that way. And then we head to the north, Brochet to Little Lake, and towards Churchill. We're looking at the deep freeze in that part of the province. We're talking about wind chills in the valleys of minus 45 to minus 50, so you need to cover up. So the south could see things change and clear by Thursday afternoon, but for now, we will be expecting that system to come our way. And Environment Canada's message is clear. Just avoid all non-essential travel. If you must go out, please slow down, keep your distance, and let somebody know you're on the road.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, our show director, is here. Corey, how do you feel about a snow day, a potential snow day?
I want to go tobogganing. I've been eager to get out with the kiddos, so I think that's in the cards potentially.
I like it. So we need a little bit more snow for that. So you're welcoming this.
Yes, yeah. For now, not so much. Once it's done, I'll be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, it is kind of the calm before the storm out there on the highways. We know it's kind of come from the west. Haven't heard of any issues on the highways right now, but if you are in Western Manitoba, I'd love for you to be our eyes and ears out there on the highways. If you're in Roblin, Brandon, anywhere around that area, and you see those highways conditions starting to deteriorate throughout the morning, you can give us a call on the CBC commuter line, or let us know what you're seeing here in the city. If it's got more slippery after that melt yesterday, give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
The Italian community in Winnipeg is giving back by feeding hundreds of families at Rossbrook House this Christmas Eve. Rossbrook House is in Winnipeg's Centennial neighborhood at the corner of Ross Avenue and Sherbrooke Street. The center offers schools, sports, and music programs to more than 1,000 children and youth between the ages of 6 and 24. The Sons and Daughters of Italy have been serving a Christmas Eve feast at the drop-in center since the pandemic. The meals are specially made for the children who Rossbrook House serves regularly, giving them an opportunity to show the center to their families and caregivers. Joining us now is Reno Angeloni, co-chair of the Christmas Feast. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you've been at this for a while now. Is this year 5?
Well, it's year 5 at Rossbrook House, and about year 18 or 19 in the West End community. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What do you remember? We'll stick with Rossbrook House here. What do you remember about that first feast there?
Well, it was about the year before the pandemic, and it was great because we were all connected up with the community, and at that time with Phil Chiappetta, who's an old school buddy of mine, and it was a natural fit because a lot of us from the Sons and Daughters of Italy grew up in the West End, grew up in that area because, with our parents coming in from a lot of immigrant families, and so that was one of the first areas of our settlement before we kind of moved on throughout the city, and it was a great fit for Rossbrook House because it was a way for the Sons and Daughters of Italy giving back, and they have a great organization. They have a wonderful drop-in center. They do God's work there. So it was a good fit for us to kind of, at least for one day, to give back to for those that are a bit more unfortunate than us, and a bit of a feast is a great idea, especially during the Christmas time.
What does it mean to the kids? How do they react when they're both eating? And I heard they also receive some gifts.
It's great food. And then at the same time, it's always great to receive a gift from Santa. We have Santa coming in, making a special trip for us, and then with the helpers. And it's magical. The kids enjoy it. There's a lot of cheer. And it's always great, because then their families come along and they can enjoy, and it's festive. It's festive for that little bit of time.
Do you know what's on the menu this year?
Well, the traditional is pasta, of course, and then it's coupled together with turkey, meatballs, and obviously some vegetables. But primarily we like to replicate a feast that we would have at home. And pasta is a very traditional feature for us.
What kind of preparation goes into feeding so many people? How much pasta do you have ready?
Well, Sorrento's, Jerry LaMonaco at Sorrento's is gracious enough to help us prepare that. So he's got the magic touch there. So basically we just say, Jerry, we got to feed X amount of kids and adults. So put it together. And he does.
Wow, that's a lot of work. Good for him.
Yeah.
What about the actual serving? How does the community come together to make it happen?
Well, we have a lot of volunteers that give up their time that day, and basically more so for the children. We like to have our members bring their sons and daughters along, because at least this way it gives them an opportunity to get involved in a charity event. And so we will have about 20 people out there, like between the serving, the cleaning up, the distributing of the toys, and just welcoming people.
Well, Reno, sounds like a fantastic evening. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope everything goes smoothly.
Great. Thank you again. All the best.
Reno Ajaloni is co-chair of the Christmas feast, served annually at Rossbrook House.
CBC's New Year's Eve show is back, and we want to know, what are you doing on New Year's Eve? Last year, we reached 6.8 million Canadians as we counted down live in all 6 time zones. Now, we're looking to join celebrations across Canada. Are you getting married? Doing something special? Send an email to ask@cbc.ca, and we might send our cameras to your party. Get ready for the live Cross Canada Countdown.
You are listening to Information Radio. The time is 6:20. Energy drinks have been in the news lately. In a recent case published in the journal BMJ Case Reports, a healthy 54-year-old man was rushed to the hospital with a stroke that doctors eventually attributed to his energy drink habit. Closer to home in New Brunswick, a 10-year-old suffered a seizure after drinking 2 energy drinks. And a coroner's report out of Quebec blames an interaction between an energy drink and prescription ADHD medication in the death of a 15-year-old last winter. For more on the potential risks, we're joined by our regular health and medicine expert, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj. Good morning.
Good morning, Chloe.
Can you briefly bring us up to speed with these cases?
Yeah, sure. So the case of this 54-year-old man in England who had a stroke, he was rushed to the ER. His blood pressure was measured at 254 over 150. And remember that normal is about 120 over 80. So his was double the normal blood pressure. And when it's that high blood pressure, it can basically burst the wall of a blood vessel, or the muscles in the blood vessel wall can sort of go into this protective spasm and basically clamp shut. And that's what he had. He had a spasm and not a bleed. So he was started on a bunch of medicines for his high blood pressure. He was eventually discharged from hospital with close follow-up and monitoring. After a few weeks, his blood pressure was increasing again, despite being on 5 different meds for high blood pressure. So that's when he mentioned to his care team that he drank some energy drinks. Ends up he drank about 8 cans per day. So the doctors asked him to please stop, and he did. And his blood pressure normalized, and he was able to get off all of his medicines for blood pressure a few weeks later, although he still had this permanent neurological problems from the stroke. The 2 Canadian cases were both in the news this month. And from media reports, it sounds like it wasn't a long-term habit that caused the problems, but a short-term intake of energy drinks. So in one case, a 10-year-old in New Brunswick had 2 energy drinks in a short period of time, and that seems to have triggered a seizure. In the other case, the coroner in Quebec just released a report saying that a teenager who was on ADHD medicines died of a cardiac arrhythmia. That's when the heart rhythm goes irregular and the heart can't pump blood properly. And so they were on ADHD meds and they had a single energy drink. And then they went into this arrhythmia. So all of these cases are really tragic and kind of shocking, I think.
So many of us drink coffee or tea to get a temporary boost of energy. I'm drinking coffee this morning. What is it specifically about energy drinks that may have caused these issues?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got my latte right beside me as well. The short answer is caffeine, and it's about sort of how much caffeine you're getting, right? So, I mean, this UK case, it was written up because it was such a sort of an edge case, right? So, this guy was drinking about 1,300 milligrams of caffeine per day. The recommended limit, the max top limit, is about 400 milligrams of caffeine per day for a person, for an adult. So for reference, a cup of coffee, your coffee that's sitting right there, probably has about 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. My latte might even have less because it's a single shot, and a single espresso shot is a 60 milligram dose of caffeine. For the tea drinkers out there, a cup of black tea has about 50 milligrams of caffeine, green tea, about 30 milligrams of caffeine. And then, regular Coke, Pepsi, something like that, depends, but about 35 to 50 milligrams of caffeine, depending on the serving size. So caffeine is certainly part of it. I mean, these energy drinks are often, have about 160 to 180, milligrams of caffeine in them.
Is that the biggest concern then with energy drinks, the amount of caffeine in them?
Well, yeah, there are other issues as well. So one is that there can be hidden sources of extra caffeine or caffeine-like substances in energy drinks. So a lot of energy drinks have extracts of a plant called guarana. Guarana seeds have roughly double the concentration of caffeine compared to coffee beans. So it's like, it's like having a high test coffee, when you make a cup of coffee and then put a shot of espresso in there, something like that, right? So there's that. And then energy drinks also have other chemicals related to caffeine that can sort of add to the effects, both good and bad, right? So things like taurine, ginseng, other chemicals that can either boost or mimic the effects of caffeine or sort of hide some of the effects of caffeine, but not sort of turn them off, Plus, energy drinks have a lot of sugar, some of them, or a lot of sugar substitutes, and both of which, they come with their own sets of health issues. But apart from the ingredients, the other issue with energy drinks is who's drinking them and how are they drinking them. So, I would say it would be unusual to see a teenager or a preteen drink 5 or 6 cups of coffee in a short amount of time.
For sure.
But if a 12 or 14 or 16-year-old slams or crushes 2 to 3 cans of energy drinks, that's a lot of stimulants over a short period of time, which is the equivalent of around, 4 to 6 cups of coffee. So a report from Europe this past spring said that 68% of adolescents in the EU consume energy drinks. A quarter of them reported drinking 3 or more cans in one go.
Really?
So, I mean, that's another issue, right? And the other thing is, when you are drinking that much caffeine that quickly, I think that's when you go from, giving me a little bit of energy to get through my morning to giving me a little bit of restlessness, anxiety, insomnia, potentially seizures or heart rhythm problems, high blood pressure, things like that. So, and that doesn't even account for, taking a bunch of caffeine before working out or taking a bunch of caffeine loaded drinks with alcohol as well, which can also increase the health risk.
So there are countries that are looking at banning the sale of these drinks to anyone under a certain age. What do you make of that approach?
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of, especially countries in the EU, are looking at. Caffeine is a drug, right? And it can be dangerous on its own, and it can be dangerous when it interacts with other drugs like ADHD medicines or blood pressure medicines or other things like that. In England, they're looking at banning the sale of energy drinks to kids under the age of 16 and also banning their sale from vending machines where kids might have unfettered access. Some European countries have already done that. They've banned the sale of energy drinks to minors. And across the EU, the European Food Safety Authority says, this voluntary self-regulation isn't consistent. Some grocery stores in some countries have stopped selling to kids, but that's because they want to, not because they're made to. So some lobby groups are calling for a ban on the sale of energy drinks to anyone under 18 in the entire European Union. And then the other important part, I think, is they're looking at banning advertising and promotion of energy drinks where minors might be, susceptible to that promotion. So think of sports. If you've ever watched a soccer game from Europe, you will see not only ads for betting websites and stuff, but for energy drinks. Think esports and things like that, or extreme sports. So in Canada, we have some regulations already. There's a maximum limit of caffeine per can kind of thing, and there's also warning labels. Things that say not recommended to have a certain number of servings per day, and language like not recommended for those under 14 years old or people who are pregnant or breastfeeding, stuff like that. I would challenge you to go, next time you're shopping, grab an energy drink off the shelf and read the label and see how easy it is to see those warnings. And then also think to yourself, if a teenager is buying this, are they going to read the label? And then maybe put that can back on the shelf.
Really interesting stuff, Dr. Bardwaj. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's House Dr. Raj Bardwaj. The time is 6:29. You are listening to Information Radio. I'm Chloe Friesen. Coming up after your CBC local news, it's a rare occurrence in the animal world. A polar bear in Churchill is taking care of not only her cub, but also another cub that isn't hers. We will hear more about this family of three coming up here on Information Radio just after your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is -15. And believe it or not, this is the nice part of the day. We're actually headed to -4, but we have a blizzard heading our way. And that is going to start to hit us later today. Lots of snow, lots of wind as well, heading for southern Manitoba. An orange warning now covers Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Pembina Valley, Brandon, Parkland, Riding Mountain, and the Interlake. It's a system that starts first in the Parklands this afternoon before hitting Winnipeg this evening. Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologist Brian Lusney says it'll be a doozy.
General kind of swath of 10 to 25 centimeters for most of the region. Red River Valley is going to be really close, 20 to 25 centimeters, kind of starting like later this afternoon and ending Thursday afternoon.
Western Manitoba is also under a freezing rain warning today. In southeast Manitoba, it is a winter storm warning for places like Victoria Beach, Nopaming, Whiteshell, Northwest Angle Provincial Forest. And in the north, Churchill, Tuduli Lake and Brochet are under a cold warning with wind chill values approaching -50 today and into tomorrow. In other news, kids in care are being sent to school in dirty clothes and going missing without anyone calling police. Those are just a few concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency placements. CBC News learned about the issues through a recent Freedom of Information request to Animiki Osason Child and Family Services. Jennifer Hedges works in the University of Manitoba's social work faculty. She says to fix those problems, we need to get to the bottom of underlying issues.
Is this a result of these overarching issues of lack of staff, lack of resources, lack of oversight?
Emergency placements are supposed to be stopgaps in Manitoba's child welfare system, but some kids are staying a lot longer than the intended 30-day maximum. Well, within weeks, 6 young people experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg will soon have a place of their own. The Spence Neighborhood Association has brought in modular housing units from Altona. It's installed those units on Sherbrooke and Langside. Benjamin Simcoe is the housing development coordinator. He says each suite is around 260 square feet. And Simcoe says this will allow them to work with people over the next few months to transition into permanent housing.
The city gave us land, 2 separate infill properties in our communities. So we've built 2 modular buildings on each site. They're identical.
The projects were funded through the Rapid Housing Initiative. Simcoe says they're installing steps, getting water and internet hooked up, and finalizing the occupancy permits. He hopes the first tenants will be in these homes by early January. Police in Australia have now laid charges against the 24-year-old man alleged to have taken part in Sunday's deadly attack at a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach. Naveed Akram, who emerged from a coma yesterday, is facing 59 charges in total, including 15 counts of murder and 1 count of committing a terrorist act. It is alleged Akram carried out the massacre with his 50-year-old father, who was shot and killed on the scene by police. Meanwhile, a former cabinet minister, Josh Frydenberg, is calling for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to open a royal commission into the shooting.
The most deadliest terrorist attack in Australia's history has occurred on your watch. There is no ifs, there is no buts. There must be a royal commission called immediately. Yes. Yeah. And we here deserve answers. We don't need pious words of comfort.
Along with promising to strengthen Australia's gun laws, Albanese vows to take all the necessary steps needed to eradicate anti-Semitism. You can hear the latest on this story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 7. A rare phenomenon in Churchill. That's how researchers at Polar Bears International sum up the adoption of a lone polar bear cub. It appears to have been adopted by a female bear with another cub of her own. Dr. Evan Richardson is a polar bear scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He was in the field in March when the mother had 1 cub. Both had GPS tracking collars. When he returned in November, she had a second cub of roughly the same age as her first, without a collar. Richardson says it is only the 13th such case of cub adoption in the Western Hudson Bay.
We really think it's just because they're so maternally charged and such good mothers, and they just can't leave a cub crying on the tundra, so they pick them up and take them along with them.
Richardson says this is a good sign for Churchill's polar bear population. You can hear more on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. And you can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the morning at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Moms are the best.
She couldn't take the crying.
Oh,
I'll just take you in.
So sweet. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Abby Adiemi is here with an update on your busy weather forecast.
Yeah, the province is actually bracing for that massive multi-threat winter storm today as that major blizzard, freezing rain and life-threatening cold sweeps across the province. We're tracking dangerous systems actually moving through. We have that cold orange blizzard warning in effect for Winnipeg, the Red River, the Westman, the Interlake, the Parkland regions. We're talking about 25 centimeters of snow expected, and the wind gusts will be about 90 kilometers, which will be making visibility near zero. That freezing rain is actually active in the southwestern part of the province, and then tracking it up north, we're looking at life-threatening deep freeze. For most of the regions down south, we're seeing temperatures that right now hover between -10 and -18, while up north, we're seeing conditions around -20 to -25. For Winnipeg, the snow starts sometime this afternoon before we're gonna see some freezing rain, and then that blizzard is going to be sweeping in the evening period. We're also looking at 15 to 25 centimeters once the system pushes through. And for Churchill, cold warning in effect. We're talking about temperatures sitting at -32 at this time, and it's even going to fall deeper to about -35, 34 later in the day. The wind chill in Churchill at this time is already in the range of -50, so you need to take it easy out there and check in on your neighbors. Once again, Winnipeg, we're at -15. We only want to -4 later in the day, but before that, we get to deal with this blizzard coming our way.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Lots to look out for here. Corey Funk, it's not affecting the commute yet, but it sure will.
Yeah, it sure will. It's looking like that system's going to hit Manitoba probably around 9-ish or so later this morning. That's going to start, of course, in western Manitoba. And that's when the highway conditions are going to start deteriorating fast. As I spoke earlier with Brian Lisney from Environment Canada. He says once that system is coming through, he does not advise travel on the highways. It's going to be very very dangerous, poor visibility, slippery, lots of snow accumulating. So be careful once that system is coming through. You may want to avoid travel altogether if you're in southern Manitoba this morning. But right now, I haven't heard of any major issues. I'm curious if there are slippery conditions after that thaw and then, of course, that freeze this morning. So let me know what you're seeing out there if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving. I would love to hear from you. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And Crystalie Ramlakan is here with a business report. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chloe.
The head of the Bank of Canada has a prediction for food prices for next year. I'm crossing my finger it's maybe good news, Crystalie?
A little optimism, but
okay.
yeah, Governor. Governor Tiff Macklem expects food inflation to ease in the coming months, and that's after Statistics Canada reported grocery prices jumped higher in November. So the rise in groceries hit a nearly 2-year high, and that's thanks largely to more expensive things like berries, beef, and coffee. And Macklem says U.S. tariffs on coffee-producing countries have affected Canada because those beans are often imported into the U.S. and refined before being sent to stores and cafes here. But Macklem expects those pressures to unwind over the coming months. However, he also warns high beef prices tied to farmers keeping smaller herds will take longer to settle. And, Macklem also acknowledged cooling food inflation would be cold comfort. Not every aisle will see relief, and prices themselves likely won't decline. They'll just go up, but at a slower pace.
Next, we're hearing that the head of Via Rail is leaving the company.
Yeah, that's right. So the president and CEO is stepping down next month. As the Crown Corporation has faced increased scrutiny in recent years. In a statement, Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon thanked Mario Pelequin for his dedication and commitment over the past 2.5 years. And Pelequin worked for 41 years in the transport industry. And his retirement comes as travelers have become increasingly critical of the rail line, especially when it comes to ticket prices. And delays are costing the company millions. So Via Rail has offered $31 million in travel vouchers to hundreds of thousands of passengers whose trains were more than an hour late in the past year. And just last week, nearly 300 passengers were stranded for as long as 13 hours after a train broke down in Ontario. So Via's on-time performance for 2023 was 23 percentage points lower than 10 years before that in 2013, when it was at 82%. And the retirement also comes as the federal government is moving ahead with plans for Canada's first high-speed rail network. McKinnon announced last week that the first leg of the project between Ottawa and Montreal is slated to begin construction in 2029.
Lastly here, Crystalie, we're about to see more video podcasts on Netflix. Tell me more.
Yes, that's right. So Netflix has about 30 podcasts lined up for next year. The streaming giant has just announced a new partnership with iHeartMedia, taking a few more shows off of its rival, YouTube. So at least 15 iHeartMedia podcasts will publish their video episodes exclusively on Netflix. And they include The Breakfast Club, which is a popular syndicated radio show that covers pop culture and hip hop, My Favorite Murder, a long-running true crime podcast, and shows from comedians Chelsea Handler and Bobby Bones. So audio versions will still be available, though, on other platforms for people who just want to listen. And Netflix also has a deal for 16 podcasts produced by Spotify Studios and The Ringer. Now, some see podcasts as a way to boost daytime viewership with audiences for traditional TV declining. But for some podcasts with a lot of ad earnings, it may be a risky move to leave YouTube.
Very interesting. Thank you, Crystalie.
Okay, thanks, Chloe.
That was Crystalie Ramlakan with the business news. It is 6:42, and we have our first school closure due to the orange warning blizzard watch for much of southern Manitoba. Due to forecasted blizzard conditions this afternoon, all Rolling River School Division schools are closed. That is for today. It's Wednesday, December 17th. Rolling River School Division, all schools are closed due to the forecasted blizzard conditions. We'll keep you updated if any other school divisions follow, and we'll also keep you updated on that weather forecast. We've got a blizzard warning for much of southern Manitoba. We also have a winter storm warning for southeast Manitoba and some freezing rain warnings and cold warnings for other parts of the province. So stay with us. We will keep you up to speed on all of that. This next segment, however, will likely pull on the maternal instincts of many of our listeners. A female polar bear in Churchill has adopted a cub that isn't hers. The polar bear already had a cub of her own. The step-siblings are around 10 and 11 months old. Evan Richardson is one of the people studying this bear family. He's a polar bear research scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. Good morning, Evan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So how was it discovered that this polar bear adopted a cub of her own?
So in Churchill, Manitoba, Environment and Climate Change Canada runs a long-term research program where research scientists like myself go up to Churchill twice a year to check up on the bears. We typically go in March and then again in September. In March of this year, we caught a female. She had one cub, and we left and she went back out on the sea ice, and then we came back in the fall to check up on various bears again. And when we ran into this female a second time, she had a second cub. And when we catch the bears, we put little tags in their ears so we can identify them over the long term and track individuals through their life. And when we landed the helicopter and approached this family group, one of the cubs had tags and one of them didn't. So we started scratching our heads because that was obviously a cue that this bear was new to this family group.
How rare is something like this?
Cub adoption is fairly rare in polar bears. It's been documented in other places like Norway and the Canadian high Arctic, and in particular in the Western Hudson Bay polar bear population that occupies the area around Churchill. This is the 13th case of cub adoption we've documented over a 45-year study. So it's less than 1% of all litters have any indication of cub adoption.
So I know you can't determine exactly where this cub came from or why it was on its own, but do we know anything about the biological mother of this cub?
So we don't know anything about the adopted cub's mother yet, but we are running genetic samples. So just kind of like CSI on TV, we can match individual genotypes and look at paternity and maternity. And so we can take this cub's genotype and then we'll bounce it against the pedigree we have that has over 4,600 individual bears that we've sampled over 45 years. And we can see if its mom is still alive and in the study population. In some of the previous cases of cub adoption, this has been the case. So mom was still alive, known to be alive, and somehow the family groups get separated. And then, another mother takes these lone cubs on and care for them in the long term.
What does this tell us about the maternal instincts of polar bears?
Polar bear mothers are pretty amazing. They're pretty fierce. I mean, they'll defend their cubs at all costs. And, cub adoption and offspring adoption in general in mammals has been documented in 60 different species. And so it really looks like, female mammals and particularly female polar bears are just maternally primed to take care of their young, and that, they really can't help themselves. If there's a lone cub that's bawling on the tundra, they just, can't help themselves, and they take them on. And we do know from our long-term research that many of these cubs do survive. So it's not just a chance encounter and the cub just kind of follows her around for, a month or two. It really looks like they do take care of them and help increase their chances of survival.
The image of just a sad baby polar bear alone is probably one of the most heartbreaking things I can think of.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely a feel good story. When we saw this female had the cub in September, and then the photos you've shared, show that she still had the cub 2 months later and was continuing to care for it. So it's great to see.
Yeah, you can see some gorgeous photos of these bears on our YouTube live stream. Evan, had this cub remained on its own, what would its chances of survival be?
The chances of survival for a 10-month-old cub are almost zero. We don't have any indication of orphaned cubs surviving till their second year. They really rely on their mothers for milk. So these females are still lactating and producing milk for their offspring. And they really need to learn how to hunt seals. They're really not big enough yet to grab their own seals. So, it really makes a huge difference that this cub was adopted.
So these cubs, you said they were 10 and 11 months old?
10 to 11 months old. So
Okay.
Polar bear cubs are born in dens in late December, early January. Yeah.
So what are the next months like for these cubs as they're growing up?
So we actually have a GPS tracking collar on this female, and we've been able to track her movements, and she's gone back out onto Hudson Bay. And so she's back out on the ice. She's hunting seals. She's putting on energetic reserves and teaching these cubs how to live out on the sea ice. So hopefully they're finding some meals. They're doing good out there. And as the polar vortex comes, the bay will freeze over, and bears will do what bears do out there. So we're looking forward to hopefully maybe encountering them again next year and updating you guys on this story.
Beyond this heartwarming story, what other kinds of things have been learned by tracking polar bears in Churchill?
We've learned a lot about habitat use and the impacts of climate change and reductions in the availability of sea ice, how much time bears are spending on land, which is gradually increasing over time. What that means for energetics of bears. Less time on the ice means less food intake, and longer periods on land mean more fasting. And so that has survival implications. So it's something we continue to track and monitor over time, and do our best to help conserve this amazing species.
Evan, thank you so much for joining us, and really looking forward to updates if you find these bears again next year.
All right. Thanks so much.
Evan Richardson is a polar bear research scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Just how does a plant become illegal? Terry O'Reilly is one toke over the line, leaving no stone unturned, exploring the history of cannabis and how it's marketed. From high-end retail stores now selling expensive paraphernalia to celebrities who have their own brands. On Under the Influence, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
The time is 6:50. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. The federal government is taking steps to address the more than 6 million Canadians without access to a consistent healthcare provider. Immigration Minister Lena Diab announced a list of measures last week aimed at persuading foreign doctors to work in Canada by making it quicker and easier for them to get permanent residency here. Here to discuss those measures is Globe and Mail health columnist Andre Picard, and he joins us from Vancouver. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you first take us through what is in this plan and how it could work?
Yeah, so the new program announced last week by the immigration minister, she called it an express entry plan for foreign doctors. So someone who has credentials from another country can come to Canada and they can get permanent residency within 6 months. And they can also be processed for a work permit within 14 days. So this is, I think, to understand how important this is, you need a little context. And the context is Canada is a very popular place for people to immigrate to. Last year, or this year alone, 2025, we've had 380,000 new permanent residents, so 1% of the population added each year. But the waits for that can be very, very long. They can stretch into years, and you don't necessarily get approved at the end. So if you say to a doctor, well, you're going to be a permanent resident within a few months, you can start working almost immediately, and makes them much more attractive for them to come here. There's not as much risk, and there's a lot of benefits.
What's the timeline on this? When would we start to see these measures take effect?
Yeah, the minister said it's going to start in early 2026, so almost immediately. It remains to be seen how quickly the bureaucracy can respond. Can they actually process people within 6 months? Hopefully, yes.
In the headline of the federal government's press release, it says that the measures are meant to boost Canada's doctor supply. But the plan itself targets doctors already in Canada. So how likely is it to attract new doctors to come here?
I think there's going to be a mixture. It is attractive to some people coming into the country especially from countries like the US and the UK that have similar systems. They could work almost immediately and become permanent residents very, very quickly. With the doctors who are foreign trained, other countries, it's a little more complicated. There's a lot of them already in Canada. There's a lot of barriers to them practicing already. They will have to have gone through all those hoops before they can benefit from this program. But once they're there, it could go much more quickly for the permanent residency. So it's a mixture of the two.
How could Canadians benefit from this program? If all goes to plan, how big of a dent could we put in our doctor shortage?
Yeah, the program allows for up to 5,000 new applicants. So that's a significant number. And it's also in addition to the allocations provinces already have. So that's important because Canada needs all kinds of skilled workers. They don't want to have to choose between, a plumber and a doctor because we need both of those. So these additional spots is really attractive for provinces who want doctors, and especially in the areas where they're most needed, like family medicine.
Speaking of that, which specific types of physicians will benefit most?
Yeah, we're really the biggest shortages are in family medicine, but there's some specialties like oncology, so cancer doctors, gynecology, doctors who deliver babies. And these programs tend to operate on point systems. So you're going to get more points if you're in a profession that's more needed. If you're willing to go to a rural and remote area, that really that helps you get fast tracked. So there's all kinds of different measures in here to attract those we need most.
According to the Canadian Medical Association, there are 1,300 internationally trained doctors in Canada who currently aren't working, but that's not necessarily who these measures are targeting. Why not? Can you explain the difference here?
Yeah, actually 13,000 international medical
Oh, my mistake,
graduates.
13,000. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a significant number. A lot of people who practice medicine in other countries are now working as cab drivers, care aides in homes, etc. And that's a waste of talent. So there's been a lot of talk of this in recent years. The problem is there's a lot of hoops that we call them IMGs have to go through. When they come to Canada, they have to complete language tests. They have to get their credentials verified. There's about 4,000 medical schools in the world. They're of varying quality, so it's hard sometimes to check out if they have a good education. They have to apply and pass qualifying exams, which is very costly and very time-consuming. You don't necessarily have a lot of money if you've moved to the country. Some have to undergo what we call practice-ready assessments. So you have to oversee them on the job one-on-one to make sure they're qualified. So there's all these hoops you have to go through, and only then can they get into this fast-track system for permanent residency. So it's difficult for the IMGs, but some of them will benefit from this program.
Lastly, Andre, what are some other ways Canada can entice more doctors from abroad to work here?
Yeah, I think a measure like this is good. It's certainly not going to, it's going to help a little bit, but we need a more broad plan to figure out how are we going to have enough doctors, enough nurses, enough healthcare workers to meet the demands of our growing, aging population. And we don't really have a plan. It's nice to have these little programs, but they don't they're not a magical solution to the larger issue. So we have to start thinking about right from who goes to medical school, who gets into residency, where do they practice, how do we distribute licenses, how do we attract people with permanent residencies, a whole suite of measures that have to be considered.
Andre, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Andre Picard is the health columnist for the Globe and Mail. He joined us from Vancouver. It's time to turn to Heather Wells with your news headlines.
Good morning. Well, no more mellow yellow. We've gone to orange level now, according to Environment Canada, with a blizzard barreling towards southern Manitoba. It's going to hit first in western Manitoba this afternoon, likely hitting Winnipeg this evening. Anywhere from 10 to 25 centimeters of snow is possible, including lots of wind, and that means blowing snow and near zero visibility. In western Manitoba, you also have a freezing rain warning today. In southeast Manitoba, a winter storm warning, and in the north, it is a cold warning with wind chill values approaching minus 50 over the next 24 hours. In other news, kids in care being sent to school in dirty clothes, going missing without anyone calling police. Those are just a few concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency child placements. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
And speaking of the orange blizzard warning, due to that forecasted storm this afternoon, all Rolling River School Division schools are closed today. That is, all schools in the Rolling River School Division are closed today due to that blizzard warning. As well, no major traffic issues to report, but as that snow starts flying and the wind starts blowing, if you're out there and you are seeing any issues with visibility or the roadways, call us 204-788-3093. Well, as that winter storm approaches Winnipeg later today, we're going to hear about a new winter response plan for those experiencing homelessness. Coming up just in the next hour, we will speak with End Homelessness Winnipeg on what's needed to keep people safe this winter. Those stories and more still to come just after World Report.
On the current.
We all assume that our way of being in the world is general, and then you learn as you get older that, oh, maybe you're weird.
Zadie Smith shot onto the literary scene 25 years ago with her novel White Teeth. She has been an intellectual force ever since. We'll talk to Zadie Smith about empathy, social media, and what she's looking forward to about aging. It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hundreds of people singing at the growing memorial on Sydney's Bondi Beach. The mourning for those killed in Sunday's attack during a Hanukkah celebration continues. And today, the suspected shooter is charged with 59 offenses. The 24-year-old is facing more than a dozen counts of murder. Georgie Smythe has the story from Sydney.
Murder, one count of displaying a prohibited terrorist symbol. These are just some of the offences Naveed Akram is facing after being formally charged in hospital while under police guard. Investigators say the terrorist attack was inspired by ISIS. On the same day, the parents of murdered 10-year-old girl Matilda came to the public memorial to place their daughter's shoes among the carpet of flowers and candles. Her father, Michael, says he tried to pull Matilda out of harm's way, but the shooting wouldn't stop.
She was in shock. She was in shock. She was telling me that it's hard to breathe, and I was holding her, and I was like, calm down. Please.
Lawmakers will meet early next week to pass new emergency measures to further restrict gun ownership in the state New South Wales. Here's Premier Chris Minns.
We are proposing a bill to cap the number of firearms, to reclassify straight pull-up and pump-action shotguns, to look at reducing magazine capacity for shotguns.
The federal government is expected to follow suit soon. Crime scene tape is slowly coming down around the beachfront, but traditional New Year's celebrations here have been ruled out and the status of other festive events at the iconic beach is unclear. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he is ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers sailing into Venezuela. Last night on social media, Trump said Venezuela is completely surrounded by a large armada. And he said it will only get bigger until Venezuela returns all of the oil, land, and other assets it previously stole from the United States. Pentagon officials were not able to answer questions about what that means, but Venezuela's government says this naval blockade is designed to steal wealth from Venezuela. It is accusing Trump of violating international law and free trade. Minnesota's Somali community is expecting to be the target of the largest round of immigration enforcement operations. 80,000 Somalis live in the Twin Cities. They heard U.S. President Donald Trump say he did not want them in the country. And as Katie Nicholson reports, they're finding ways to push back.
A handful of ICE agents surrounded by protesters in the middle of a residential street. What was a traffic stop, now an angry confrontation. Agents fire pepper balls into the ground, and the crowd retreats a little.
I've been pepper sprayed twice today. I'm not deterred.
This is Democratic State Representative Aisha Gomez's neighborhood.
We're standing up for our community. This community is going to continue to mobilize as long as we have secret police invading our streets.
While some in Minnesota welcome ICE, the governor, the mayors of St. Paul and Minneapolis have not. Many in the Twin Cities have signed up for rapid response training to monitor and document ICE raids.
From 115 to over 500 signups.
Yu Du works with one of the training groups.
They're business owners, they're neighbors, they're teachers, they're nurses, healthcare workers, like everyone under the sun that you can think of.
Many of them inspired to take action by the U.S. president's tirades against the Somali community in the state. Donald Trump called them garbage. Even though most of the 80,000 Somalis who live there are citizens, Somalis are scared, says Farah, who doesn't want us to use his last name because he fears repercussions.
There's people that aren't leaving their house because they're scared. There's people that literally have not gone out for groceries for days and weeks, and they're citizens.
A fear only underscored when an American-born Somali man was dragged through the snow and briefly arrested by ICE on his way to pick up lunch last week. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Minneapolis.
Lawyers and advocates say children across Ontario are losing their legal immigration status. These youth have applied under Canada's humanitarian and compassionate immigration pathway, but they face decades-long processing times. And as Priscilla Kisong Kwong reports, some are becoming undocumented while they wait.
It really hit me like last year.
In his Ottawa home, surrounded by his basketball medals and trophies, John says he couldn't travel with his team to tournaments in the U.S. and can't get his driver's license. Just a toddler when he came to Canada, he's now 16 and undocumented. CBC is protecting John's real name because of deportation risks.
I mean, I couldn't really live the regular teenager life, so I felt like I was behind.
John is waiting for permanent residence under the humanitarian and compassionate stream. But this fall, the wait time ballooned from roughly 2 years to more than a decade because the government slashed its immigration levels to numbers lawyers call unprecedented. Heather Neufeld is an immigration lawyer. She says without status, people can't legally work, study, or access health care.
So instead of being a leader in protecting people, we're going to become just like the U.S. with an underclass of undocumented people.
Liz Okai is with the Child Welfare Immigration Center of Excellence. She wants the federal government to expedite vulnerable youth's applications,
so that they don't spend their entire formative years being in limbo and being in fear and hiding.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says its processing times are transparent and up to date and puts the onus on applicants to request urgent processing. John says he worries for other youth like him.
It's a little heartbreaking, and I hope that it changes a little bit.
Priscilla Kisan Huang, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's Secretary of Sport, Adam Van Koeverden, is standing behind Skate Canada. The national sport organization says it will no longer host major events in Alberta. It made that decision after the province banned transgender athletes from participating in women's sport.
We believe that a sports system that is rooted in fairness and welcoming and is inclusive for all athletes is the best path forward.
Vancouverton says all Canadians should have the opportunity to play sports, including those in the transgender community. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says women and girls have the right to play competitive sports in a safe and fair environment against other biological females. The head of Via Rail is stepping down next month. CEO Mario Pelequin will retire in January after just 3 years on the job. His departure comes as some travelers are increasingly critical of the service on the National Rail line. Just last week, nearly 300 people were stranded overnight on 3 Via Rail trains in Eastern Ontario. The federal government also recently announced it is moving ahead with the country's first high-speed rail network. Construction is expected to begin in 2029. The province of Quebec is introducing new winter safety guidelines for schoolyards. They include complex rules and daily inspections for kids playing on piles of snow. And as Alexander Silberman tells us, those restrictions are getting a frosty reception.
A winter tradition in Canadian schoolyards, jumping, sliding, and rolling down big mounds of snow. But now Quebec schools are being encouraged to follow a new list of safety rules, including possibly wearing helmets.
I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think kids are kids.
The idea generating strong reaction on the streets of Montreal.
The people who are in fear are the adults.
The guidelines come from a group insurance association aiming to avoid complaints from parents and potential lawsuits. Snow piles need to be between 1.8 and 3 meters high, with a pitch of around 25%. But Quebec Premier François Legault argues the idea of wearing helmets in the schoolyard is excessive. And some experts say outdoor risky play is an essential part of early childhood development.
I'm a bit concerned in terms of trying to be overly prescriptive around how we provide those kinds of environments.
Mariana Brusoni is a pediatrics professor at the University of British Columbia.
How fast do I want to take my speed down that slope? Those kinds of things that we want to really allow kids to make decisions for themselves.
There are no consequences for schools that don't implement the guidelines, many trying to strike a balance, keeping kids safe while letting a little bit of a tumble still be part of the fun. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Montreal.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young, News Anytime, cbcnews.ca.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Coming up in this hour of the show, kids in CFS care going to school in dirty clothes and going missing without anyone calling the police. At 7:50, we'll hear more concerns about the child welfare system's emergency placements that were revealed through Freedom of Information requests. As well, Dr. Iris Gorfinkel will join us to have a look at this year's flu season. It's already shaping up to be a severe one, and children are particularly at risk. First, and Homelessness Winnipeg has released its winter weather response plan. We'll hear about the resources and supports available to help protect people during the winter months. CBC's Heather Wells joins us for a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, within weeks, 6 young people experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg will soon have a place of their own. The Spence Neighborhood Association has brought in modular housing units from Altona and has installed them on Sherbrooke and Langside. Benjamin Simcoe is with the Housing Development Group. He says each suite is around 260 square feet. We're going to hear more from him about what these young people can expect when they move in. As well, a rare adoption in Churchill. A lone polar bear cub has been adopted by a polar bear mother that already had a cub. Apparently that doesn't happen often, and we're going to hear why it may have happened this time in our next local news at 7:30.
We saw some photos of the cubs earlier on the show, Heather.
Yeah.
I know I can't and I shouldn't. I just want to hug them. They
Oh,
just
no,
look
yeah,
so
don't do
fluffy.
that.
I'm not going
But
to.
adorable, right?
But I'll just imagine it, and it's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. We are looking at a lot going on in your weather forecast. Abby Adiyemi will join us with all the details, but I do want to mention, due to forecast blizzard conditions this afternoon, all Rolling River School Division schools are closed today. That is the Rolling River School Division. All schools are closed due to the forecasted blizzard conditions. If we have any additional closures, we will keep you updated throughout the show. But Abby is here to keep us updated about the blizzard warning and freezing rain, and there's just so much going on.
Yeah, a serious winter storm actually slamming the province today, bringing a mix of, dangerous blizzard conditions to the south. And then if you track it up north, we're talking about life-threatening Arctic cold, which wind chills in the values of minus 50s. This winter storm, we already have that orange level blizzard warning, which covers Winnipeg, the Red River Valley region, the Westman region, the Interlake region. This will be coming with about 20 centimeters of snow and about 90-kilometer gusts of winds, which will be creating total whiteout in open areas. And then further south, we're tracking that freezing rain for Brandon towards Steinbach, and the north also facing that life-threatening deep freeze wind chills. We're looking at values of minus 50s as you travel up north. Winnipeg right now, minus 14, clear outside. We're bracing for high near minus 4 as the snow and the freezing rain kicks in later this afternoon before we see that full blizzard take over in the evening. Across board, most of the regions between minus 10 and minus 16 at this time, and most of the regions down south expecting, freezing rain and heavy snow. We're talking about 20 to 25 centimeters of snow coming our way. But up north, that wind chill still feels like minus 50 in Churchill this morning, so take it easy.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
And thank you to Darren Morash, our YouTube live stream producer. Corey Funk, our show director, is here with a look at the commute.
Yeah, right now, actually, it is quite literally the calm before the storm. Haven't heard of any major issues here in the city or on the highways. Might be slippery because of that thaw and that freeze, but do expect highway conditions to deteriorate throughout the day, starting in western Manitoba. Looks like that system's going to kind of cross over from Saskatchewan, probably into western Manitoba, probably around 9-ish or so, a little bit later this morning after our show ends, probably, and then start making its way. And then, as we heard from Environment Canada saying they don't advise any unnecessary travel today once that system is making its way through your area, because there's going to be lots of snow, very slippery, poor visibility. So be very, very careful if you have to hit the highways today, or just if you don't have to, don't go out there. It's not going to be great driving conditions out there later today as that moves through the province. If you do see something going on right now, though, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, that winter storm is on the way, and the ones impacted the most are those living outdoors. Extreme cold and blizzard conditions can be dangerous. Last weekend, Homelessness Winnipeg released its 2025-2026 winter weather response plan. It's a citywide effort to make sure no one is left without supports during extreme cold or dangerous weather. It brings together emergency shelters, mobile outreach teams, youth hubs, and women's safe spaces to provide services to those in need. Joining us now to talk about how the plan works is Helen Robinson-Settee. She's board secretary of End Homelessness Winnipeg. Good morning.
Good morning.
What goes through your mind, Helen, as you hear what we were talking about with this inclement weather on the way?
Well, we certainly worry about our relatives who are out there, in this extreme cold. That it's very, it can be very dangerous, especially for those that don't have those supports. And so that's part of why this response plan, was released to help find the safe places, warm places where our relatives could go and find shelter, find food, find warm clothing. If they need any kind of medical, assistance, they can receive that at the various places of safety.
What's the focus of this year's winter response plan? Is it the locating of these spaces?
Yes. There's a number of places, there's a number of partners. There's a response team that has been working together to ensure that there are various resources, available for relatives to find these safe places. You mentioned at the beginning that there's these shelters that are available, some overnight warming spaces, some places that are there specifically for youth and for women and gender diverse relatives, and as well too some places for drop-in as well too that are available. There's also different mobile outreach services that are also available as well too. So that's what I think about, like when I see our relatives on the streets, and that they can be able to access at various points these different supports for themselves.
Helen, did the city's new bylaw, the encampment bylaw, play any role in the planning for this winter, as we're seeing encampments close to public areas, daycares, schools being removed with people being provided information and resources?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go for it. Continue.
Yeah, actually, no, this response plan was also in place last year. For our relatives, the various partners got together to make sure that, with our weather conditions here, in Winnipeg, sometimes they're very severe. So there was a plan already last year, this response plan was in place already. So the encampments certainly didn't really have an effect on that last year. So that is something that has been in place already.
How are you making sure that people know about this plan and the services offered?
Well, all of the various partners have the information as well too. There's a website available on the End Homelessness Winnipeg webpage, and as well 2,000 brochures were printed to hand out to our relatives out on the streets, and so that they would know where they could access services. And as well too, the ones that are already accessing services would be aware as well too of some of these places that are available, during the winter months to support them and to ensure that they find these places of safety and warmth.
Helen, I've heard that there's something new. It's a community circle teepee that's set up. Can you tell me more?
Yeah, it's called a community care camp, and it's actually led by the Sabe peacekeepers, and it's really set up for to be set up in extreme weather conditions, and for people to access overnight warmth and needs, and also some traditional teaching and healing ceremonies are available. And it runs from November until March, and they do it 4 days at a time during extreme weather alerts. And as well too, these community care camps are also have a 24-hour service, plus individuals who are there as well too, working at the care camps.
What do you hear from shelter spaces and organizations? Are we going to have enough indoor spaces available during extreme cold weather?
There is always need for more, more shelter spaces. Certainly they are filling up. And, we certainly we always need more spaces for our relatives, in these weather conditions. And, certainly all the organizations are certainly doing their best. It's not only End Homelessness Winnipeg, certainly we are one of the major organizations, but there's a lot of different relatives who are offering all of these different places. And so when they fill up, they refer them to other agencies, other places that they can potentially access, that warmth and that safety for themselves.
What should Winnipeggers do if they come across someone who is outside during extreme cold or other weather events? What should their first instinct be?
Well, the first instinct should be, to stop and see if they can offer some help or even a ride, because there are outreach mobiles out there. But they're, if they happen to see somebody, stop and ask if they need some help or if they need a ride somewhere. To one of the shelters or to one of the sites, and don't just drive by or don't just walk by. ask if they need help and what they need. Because sometimes they might just need, a cup of coffee, or they might need a ride to, can you drop me off here at this location?
Helen, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Helen Robinson-Settee, Board Secretary of End Homelessness Winnipeg. The time is 7:22. You are listening to Information Radio. Two artists are working together to celebrate Canadian music legend Joni Mitchell. A series of Joni Jams, special concerts, marked Mitchell's return to the stage after years away, recovering from illness. Here's Canadian singer-songwriter Allison Russell, joined by American powerhouse Brandi Carlile. This is You're Not Alone.
Star, how bright you are. Anywhere you go, you're not alone. Rocks and bugs and angel wings, every little shiny thing. North Star and the compass, always finding something wondrous. Anywhere you go, you're not alone.
Russell, joined by Brandi Carlile. The song is You're Not Alone. Brandi Carlile will be touring her new album in the new year with a stop in Toronto on February 18th. One of the songs on her new album is called Joni. It's a warm tribute to Canada's Joni Mitchell. You're listening to Information Radio. The time is 7:25. Turning to sports news with Scott Regehr. Good morning.
Hey, Chloe.
Let's start with hockey, where the Winnipeg Jets are heading off on their final road trip before the holiday break.
They are. They're in St. Louis tonight, Chloe, taking on the Blues. It will be the first matchup between the two since Winnipeg knocked the Blues out of last season's playoffs in an occurrence some will recall being called the Manitoba Miracle. Game 7, down by a goal, and Cole Perfetti. Remember that? Scoring with mere seconds remaining, and then Adam Lowry in double OT ending it. Now, that's a far cry from where these teams are at the moment. Both the Jets and Blues well back of a playoff spot. Perfetti said that while it was cool to be part of that game last playoffs, he will not be thinking about it much tonight.
It's nice to look back on. It's a very, very good memory to have, but we're just looking to go into St. Louis. Obviously they're a division opponent, so it's going to be a big game for us, and we've got a few games before Christmas, and start to trip off on the right foot.
Puck drop 7 o'clock for that one. Meanwhile, in the NHL last night, Leon Draisaitl 4 assists in the Oilers' win over Pittsburgh. One of those assists, the 1,000th point of the Deutschland Dangler's career. He's the 103rd player in league history to manage that feat. In the PWHL, meanwhile, backstopped by Brandon's Kristen Campbell, the Vancouver Golden Eyes beat Ottawa yesterday 2-1. The Golden Eyes thus become the first team in the league to win 3 straight home games to begin their existence, their inaugural season.
Very impressive. We're going to stay on the ice. Skate Canada says it will no longer host major events in Alberta.
Right. So the organization, Chloe, says the decision comes after reviewing that province's legislation on the participation of transgender athletes in women's sport. Alberta introduced a bill in September that permits only athletes assigned female at birth to compete in women's sports. Skate Canada says the legislation will not allow it to maintain its national standards for safe and inclusive sport. Caitlin Weaver, a 2-time national ice dance champion who identifies as queer, says she's proud of Skate Canada's decision.
Skate Canada was the first federation in the world to allow just 2 skaters to skate together of any gender. Now we see kids that enjoy themselves so much on the ice. What we can do in Canada is really connect the community, make it safe for these athletes, and keep our grass green and let the chips fall where they may with the other sports around the world.
That's skater Caitlin Weaver. For her part, Chloe, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith calls Skate Canada's decision disgraceful. Smith says her province is moving in the same direction as the International Olympic Committee, which is currently reviewing its definition of female sports. It's expected to move towards a blanket ban on transgender women who've gone through male puberty from competing in the female category going forward.
Scott will finish with cross-country skiing, where an Albertan clinched a spot yesterday on Canada's Olympic team.
Canmore's Xavier McKeever, boy, you can tell they're getting close to the holidays here. McKeever is a name known to many people who followed Olympic sport in the past. His dad, Robin McKeever, was an Olympian, and his uncle, Brian McKeever, a 20-time Paralympic medal winner. So Zav needed to win the men's sprint at the Canadian Trials yesterday to clinch a first-ever berth in the Winter Games. It came down to the final meter. He lunged for the line and prevailed by a boot.
I was listening to Lose Yourself by Eminem. You know, you got one shot, one opportunity, and that was the motto for today, and I pulled through. It's been a hard week. You know, seeing your close friends win races and make it, and you're kind of like on the outside looking in, was really tough. And I was just like laying in the snow trying to process, and you know, you get up and you see all the boys around you. It's amazing.
When Zav crossed the finish line, his teammates and parents were there to mob him. Asked what the key to his success was, Chloe, he said, yeah, the support of my friends and family, but also Lego. He says he built a whole set before the race yesterday, which he credits with giving him calm before the chaos. I think I'm going to have to drag out one of my son's Lego sets for a little Lego therapy.
I feel like that might add chaos to my life. I'm not a good Lego builder.
Well, if you miss even one piece,
right?
Yeah, it becomes undone very quickly.
But also, you know what? I could use the Eminem motivation, though. I think that would do it for me.
I always liked that song. Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
That is CBC's Scott Regehr. It's time now for local news with Heather Wells.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. The sky is clear and it's minus 14, a high today of minus 4, but just wait for it. Periods of snow, heavy at times, starting this afternoon. And a winter storm is about to wall up the entire province. In southern Manitoba, a blizzard is barreling our way, prompting an orange warning from Environment Canada. It's expected to start later this morning in the Parkland area and then move its way east through the day. Winnipeg will see blizzard conditions this evening. Brian Lusney is a meteorologist at Environment and Climate Change Canada. He says we could see between 10 and 25 centimeters.
You start to get that rapidly accumulating snow this afternoon and evening, and then the winds start picking up 60 gusts and 80, potentially even up to 90 kilometers an hour. And so you're going to have that really strong winds combined with falling snow, and that's going to create really near zero visibilities.
Western Manitoba is also under a freezing rain warning today. In southeast Manitoba, it is a winter storm warning. And in the north, Churchill, Tuduli Lake, and Brochet under a cold warning with wind chill values approaching minus 50. Kids in care being sent to school in dirty clothes and going missing without anyone calling police. Those are just a few of the concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency placements. CBC News learned about those issues through a recent Freedom of Information request to Anamiki Osason Child and Family Services. Jennifer Hedges works in the University of Manitoba social work faculty. She says to fix these problems, we need to get to the bottom of underlying issues.
Is this a result of these overarching issues of lack of staff, lack of resources, lack of oversight?
Emergency placements are supposed to be stopgaps in Manitoba's child welfare system, but some kids are staying a lot longer than the intended 30-day maximum. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. The Spence Neighborhood Association is almost ready to get 6 young people into transitional housing. 2 modular buildings were built in Altona. They were recently installed on their sites in Sherbrooke and Langside Streets in Winnipeg. Benjamin Simcoe is the housing coordinator. He says they're installing front steps, water and internet, which is needed for these specialized locks. Simcoe says fridges, microwaves, and bedding are also on the way for suites in both buildings.
Each have 3 transitional housing units in them, 260 square feet. Everything is electrical. Folks have everything that they need to live, and we will have our housing workers nearby providing wraparound supports, everything that somebody needs to get stable and get into permanent housing.
Simcoe expects people will live in the transitional suites for 3 to 6 months. He says workers will help with other supports like finding doctors, addiction counseling, and work. Simcoe hopes the units will be ready in early January. Australian police have now laid charges against the 24-year-old man alleged to have taken part in Sunday's deadly attack on a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach. Naveed Akram, who emerged from a coma yesterday, faces 59 charges in total, including 15 counts of murder and 1 count of committing a terrorist act. It is alleged Akram carried out the massacre with his 50-year-old father, who was shot and killed on the scene by police. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers sailing into Venezuela. In a post on social media, Trump says Venezuela is now completely surrounded by an American armada that will only get bigger until Venezuela returns all the oil, land, and other assets it's stolen from the United States. Now, at this point, Pentagon officials have yet to comment on exactly what that means. The Venezuelan government calls the blockade a violation of international law and says it will take its concerns to the United Nations. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A rare adoption in Churchill. An orphaned bear cub, a polar bear cub, adopted by a polar bear mother that already had a cub. Alyssa McCall is Director of Conservation Outreach at Polar Bears International. She says this adoption is one of compassion.
It's just another reason why the species is so incredible, why they're so fascinating and interesting. And it gives you a lot of hope when you realize that polar bears maybe are looking out for each other out there, which is pretty neat.
Scientists estimate the likelihood of a polar bear surviving to adulthood is 50%, and that number drops closer to 0 without its mother. Researchers say this is just the 13th such case of polar bear cub adoption in the Western Hudson Bay subpopulation. You can read more on that story, and you can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Abby Adiyemi is here with a look at a busy, is that the right word? Busy
and
intense.
From yellow to orange.
Yes.
Blizzard warning covers Winnipeg, the Red River Valley region, the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake region. We're looking at about 25 centimeters of snow coming our way, and this has been tracked from the Parkland region, which will sweep through the south. We're talking about it's even going to get all the way towards Steinbach, where we'll be seeing freezing rain tracking all the way towards Morden. Along with that 25 centimeters of snow we're expecting, we'll be seeing wind gusts. We're talking about 90 kilometers of winds coming to push that around. So we will get whiteouts if you are on the road, let's say during your commute home later in the evening, or you're spending time outside, you might start to feel that whiteout as you are heading home. Or for folks around the Steinbach area, freezing rain coming your way. Expect more like an ice rink in most of the regions, and then the blowing snow will be a thing that the southern part of the province will be facing tonight. Up north, we're looking at wind chills close to minus 50s. Now, talking about current conditions, Winnipeg minus 14 at this time, clear, but it will change fast as the snow and the freezing rain arrives later this evening, and then that blizzard develops tonight. We warmed about minus 4 later. For the Pembina Valley region, Modern Winker, Altoona Morris down to the U.S. border, minus 10 at this time. Also bracing for the snow and the freezing rain coming your way. Brandon is at minus 16 at this time. Freezing rain also switching to blowing snow for that part of the province. You warmed about minus 5 later. In the Parkland region, starting at minus 18, you will get that heavy snow first. That's going to move in around the noon period. Then it's going to lead to some blizzard conditions. Gimli, you're at minus 16 right now. Heavy snow also coming your way around the noon period. You will see the blizzard peak tonight. For the path, influence surrounding communities quiet at this time, but cold, minus 20, expected a mix of sun and clouds today. While in Thompson, we're looking at frigid minus 29, also clear conditions. We will see the wind chill around minus 37. And then tracking it towards Churchill, to Dooley Lake and Lynn Lake, we're seeing temperatures hover between minus 30 and minus 34 at this time, but the wind chill value actually hits minus 50, so you need to take care if you're in that part of the province. But overall, due to the conditions we're going to be having later today from the afternoon period into the overnight, the roads are going to be really, really tricky to navigate, and if you must, stay off the roads today.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And with this weather, Rolling River School Division schools are closed today due to that forecasted blizzard. Again, that's Rolling River School Division. All schools are closed today. Corey Funk is here with a look at the commute.
Yeah, right now, actually not too bad on the highways, but it will deteriorate throughout the morning. Looks like that system is going to start crossing the border from Saskatchewan into western Manitoba later this morning, maybe sometime after 8, 9 or so. So you're going to start seeing conditions deteriorate across southern Manitoba from then. And Environment Canada suggests you do not travel if you don't have to, because it's going to be pretty bad out there on the highways as the afternoon and evening settles in. Other than that, though, if you do see something on the roads here in Winnipeg, haven't heard of any major issues, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Corey.
Thank you.
And speaking of winter weather and commuting, Winnipeg Transit is bringing in some changes just in time for the new winter schedule. In the 8 o'clock hour, we'll hear from the manager of service development to find out what's changing and how the public played a part. But first, staff, I'm jumping ahead. Cases of influenza are spreading quickly. Kids are being hit particularly hard this year. It is already sending a flood of children into hospitals across the country, and complications from the illness have also been responsible for several deaths. Joining us now is Dr. Iris Gorfinkel. She's a family physician and clinical researcher. Good morning, Dr. Gorfinkel.
Good morning.
So, what has been the impact of the flu on children so far this year?
Well, it's already hitting some Canadian cities pretty hard. There's a new variant of H3N2 our bodies just haven't seen before. Now, it's not thought to cause any more severe disease, but it is causing more cases because it's more contagious. And that early spike is not a good sign. It often signals a longer flu season, more cases, more hospitalizations, unless we up our game on vaccines. And there are concerning signals. Keep in mind that the number of confirmed cases is the canary in the coal mine. It's the small fraction of what's actually out there. Take the Eastern Ontario's Children's Hospital. They had 145 confirmed cases. That's 8 times more cases than they usually see at this time of year. And it's not just Ontario. Quebec and BC have seen a steep rise in flu cases. There were 3 unfortunate, tragic deaths in the Ottawa region from influenza A this month. And H3N2 is a worry because in the past, that type of influenza has led to worse outcomes, hitting kids and seniors especially hard.
What are the symptoms that children are experiencing?
It hits them like a truck. They have sudden high fever, chills, headache, muscle aches, extreme fatigue, sore throat, and a dry, hacking cough. I'll share a little factoid with you. 1 out of 3 wind up with GI symptoms. So you see vomiting, diarrhea. You might not think influenza, but actually in kids, that's more likely. It's almost half when the kids are very young, under 5. And that puts them at risk of dehydration. So typical flus, they last about a week, but that cough, fatigue, and sometimes that diarrhea can linger up to 2 weeks.
How are the symptoms different from a cold?
Well, they say colds creep, flu pounces. I kind of like that because it's easy to remember. If you see a child, they're engaging, they're happy, they're coming to the dinner table, chances are that child's not going to need an antibiotic. Chances are that child's not that sick. Influenza makes kids really sick, and they can tank in the space of just a few hours. So it's important to understand. They've got those tiny little airways. It doesn't take a lot of mucus and inflammation to totally block them up, cause a lot of wheezing and chest tightness.
What are the particular dangers for children?
So any fever in a child under 3 months is a reason to get that child to the emergency room to get checked. You never know. We don't see it very often, but it could be things like meningitis, so we have to take those very seriously. But other serious warning signs, a lot of the time when a child's brought into my office, I just look at them. And if they're listless, the parent is bringing them in, their eyes are kind of rolling backwards, they're just not looking well. They have a really smelly diaper from that concentrated urine. These are signs of dehydration. If the child is clearly having labored breathing, they're breathing more quickly, sign of pneumonia. So it's important because infants under 6 months, they're up to 5-fold increased risk of being hospitalized. And that's why it's so important to have the people who are looking after them vaccinated so that they don't get it and they also don't give it. It's less likely. Now, to be fair, vaccination isn't great at reducing transmission, but what it does do is it cuts the risk of hospitalization by almost half. And that's even in years where the type of flu going around doesn't exactly match what's in the vaccine.
You mentioned vaccines, but what are the other things parents can do to protect their kids from the flu?
So think about keeping them at home when they're sick, because that's really what spreads it. And this particular variant of H3N2 is really contagious. Also, instruct the child, when you cough, please do not cough in our faces. Cough in your sleep. Remember this? That's what they should be taught to do. Hand wash. And why? Because influenza is spread by surfaces. So are cold viruses. They're spread by aerosols. So I know this isn't a popular thing to say, but hey, wear the mask because that does reduce transmission. And here's a question. Why are we not using more air filtration in classrooms when we know that reduces transmission? That's a nice background thing that should be, but isn't used often enough.
Dr. Gorfinkel, if a child does get the flu, what are your recommendations for helping them through it?
So acetaminophen, ibuprofen, like Tylenol, Advil, these sort of things can make a difference to a child. They make them feel better, but they don't reduce how long that flu is going to last. Honey can actually be useful in reducing the cough and helping sleep. Now, it should not be used in children under 1 year of age. Factoid, it can cause botulism in an infant. But a humidifier, for the same reason that going into a hot shower works. It actually loosens the mucus and eases breathing, especially at night, but only distilled or boiled water should be used. So what about, vitamin C, zinc, echinacea? They really don't work that well in children, and that zinc can actually worsen their diarrhea. So here's the best factoid I can give you. When in doubt, when that spidey sense is tingling and you're thinking, this isn't a regular cold, get the child checked.
Dr. Gorfinkel, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Many thanks for having me.
Dr. Iris Gorfinkel is a family doctor and clinical researcher.
On This is Manitoba, we celebrate who we are, and we lean into the challenges here that can make this place even better. I'm Marcy Marcusa, host of This is Manitoba. On the podcast, we tackle one topic in a new episode every Friday. It's always about us, the news, and the people here. Get into some local listening. Find and follow This is Manitoba wherever you get your podcasts.
The time is 7:46. You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. We have a commute update. Richard called the commuter line. He said that on southbound Archibald at Mission, there's a stalled car with its tire off in the left lane. Probably not moving anytime soon. It's keeping folks from turning left. The backups aren't too large quite yet, but they could start to increase. Again, stalled car southbound Archibald at Mission. It is in the left lane. Well, turning to some provincial news, staff sending children into CFS care to school in dirty clothes, not following protocol when kids go missing, and refusing to do training to care for a little girl's eczema, despite it being recommended by her pediatrician. Those are just a few of the concerns one Manitoba Child Welfare Agency has raised about what it's seeing happening in its system's emergency placements. CBC News learned about those issues through a recent Freedom of Information request. The CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck is here now to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning.
So these concerns are about emergency placements in the CFS system. Can you tell us what emergency placements are?
Yeah, so basically they're a place for kids in care to go when there's nowhere else for them. So they're supposed to be sort of this stopgap, last resort kind of measure. They're used, for example, when a child is first apprehended, or because workers maybe need more time to find a place that can take like a whole sibling group or a child with complex needs. These placements are staffed by shift workers. Sometimes they're in a home in a residential area, sometimes in a bigger facility. The key, though, with these placements is kids are only supposed to stay there up to 30 days, but we know some are staying much longer. And that's something the province is trying to address with the new policy that charges agencies hefty fees for when kids are left in these emergency placements longer than 30 days. So I spoke with someone who, as a teenager in care, ended up in those placements again and again. Today, Joshua Nepanak is 25 and has a kid of his own. Here's how he describes emergency placements looking back on that time now.
When I became a father, I was always told that, the family's built around the table in the backyard. And in these, these moments that you spend with your kid, and there's just none of that happens because you're not somebody's kid, you're somebody's job.
What can you tell us about some of the concerns that are being raised about these placements?
They're pretty wide-ranging. So there were dozens of complaints related to everything from medical care to supervision to clothing. You mentioned a few of them already a second ago around those topics. But there also were issues like staff not teaching kids how to brush their teeth, refusing to take them out for free outings, things even like trick-or-treating on Halloween, and sending them to school with lunches that were described as highly inadequate. Another person I spoke to for this story was Jamie Fow. She's a long-term foster mom and the president of the Manitoba Foster Parent Association. She says it breaks her heart to hear about the conditions some of these kids are growing up in, but as a former group home worker herself and someone who has a foster kid who came to her from an emergency placement, she's also not really surprised to hear some of those concerns about the staff there.
They go into it with good intentions. Very quickly, I think they're overwhelmed and are probably shocked at the behaviors and the lack of resources and supports that they themselves have. And so I think it's easy for staff to just mentally check out.
And for Joshua Nepanak, hearing some of those concerns brought back a lot of memories from when he was taken into care at 15, with just the clothes on his back and a few donated items from social agencies.
That can only get you so far, and it could only do so much. And so, I'd go from placement to placement to placement with like a little garbage bag of clothing.
So where did these concerns come from?
So I learned about these issues through a Freedom of Information request I filed with an agency called Animiki Osazon Child and Family Services. It's based here in Winnipeg, but mostly helps kids with ties to First Nations in Ontario. They say they only put kids in emergency placements after making extensive effort to find a foster home or another place for the kids to stay, or when a child needs placement urgently at the end of a business day and when there aren't other options available. They also say that over the last 6 years, this agency has seen a steady decline in the ability of these emergency placements to supportively care for kids, and staff who just don't seem to have the proper training or experience. That concern about a lack of training is also something that foster mom I talked to, Jamie Fow, brought up. She says many workers she's seen also aren't familiar with Manitoba's history of colonization and its effects, which she says is a big problem in a CFS system where over 90% of kids are Indigenous.
These children have high complex needs, and when we are staffing these homes with minimum wage staff, some who have absolutely no idea of the history of this province, we're just setting everybody up for failure.
What's the solution here? How can these issues in emergency placements be addressed?
One expert I spoke to says some of the issues being raised about these emergency placements, like not reporting a missing child or not taking kids trick-or-treating, could be because of unclear standards or a lack of resources to be able to follow those standards. But other issues brought up, like workers sending kids to school in dirty clothes or not showing them how to brush their teeth, shouldn't be happening. And if they are, she says we need to get to the bottom of why. Jennifer Hedges is an assistant professor in the U of M's social work faculty.
Is this a result of these overarching issues of lack of staff, lack of resources, lack of oversight? If kids are going into a placement because they're unsafe somewhere else, they should not be experiencing further situations that continue to be unsafe.
Manitoba Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine says it's up to agencies to report problems with emergency placements so the province can look into them.
It is incumbent on them to report it to the department so that the department, one of our specialized licensing investigators, can look at the concerns that are being raised.
Animiki Osazon Child and Family Services says it has reported issues with those placements. And for former Kid and Care Joshua Niepanak, the issues being raised about emergency placements make him wonder what the purpose of those placements is supposed to be, and if there's a better way to care for kids who have nowhere else to go.
It highlights the question of why do we have them if they're not doing what they're meant to do?
Thank you so much for bringing us this story, Caitlin.
You're welcome.
Caitlin Gowerluck is a reporter with CBC Manitoba. You can read more on her story on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
This festive season, there's one place to be with your holiday favorites on CBC. Whether you're a Grinch,
hate, double hate,
or full of cheer.
Nobody's walking out on this fun old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together.
The season's best are waiting right here.
The bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe.
For holiday joy from start to end, watch free on CBC and CBC Gem.
Stuff your stocking with laughter. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival is back for its 25th anniversary, and CBC is a proud sponsor. This is your chance to see The Debaters, the mega shows featuring the best of Canadian comedy and all the best homegrown comics making Manitoba laugh. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival, April 20th to 26th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
You are listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on your CBC Listen app. I'm Chloe Friesen. We're going to go through some of the weather warnings, some of the many weather warnings happening in our province. So bear with me here. There's a lot to go over. First is the orange warning for a blizzard in southern Manitoba, including the city of Winnipeg, Steinbach, Selkirk, Portage la Prairie, Morden, Brandon, Verdun, Dauphin, Minnedosa, St. Rose, Arborg, and surrounding areas. We're seeing blizzard conditions with gusty winds and visibility frequently near zero with snow and blowing snow expected. This is a strong Alberta clipper bringing heavy snow and strong gusty winds to the southern part of the province. It'll make travel difficult and likely impossible due to near zero visibility. This is set to start just after the show ends, actually, around 9 o'clock. As well, we have a yellow warning winter storm for southeastern Manitoba. This is affecting Bissett, Victoria Beach, Whiteshell, Lac de Bonnie, Sprague. So this same Alberta clipper could bring 10 to 20 centimeters of snow, 50 to 60 kilometer an hour winds, also reducing visibility with blowing snow and causing issues with roads and walkways. So road closures could be possible, and make sure that you are being careful out there if you are traveling. We have a yellow warning for freezing rain for southern Manitoba just before we head into the snow here. So this is areas like Steinbach, St. Adolphe, Morden, Winkler, Brandon, Neepawa, Killarney, Melita, and Boissevain. We could see total freezing rain amounts of 1 to 2 millimeters. This is just a few hours of freezing rain expected this morning. So lots going on. We'll keep you updated throughout the morning here, but it's time to look at news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, within weeks, 6 young people experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg will soon have a place of their own. The Spence Neighborhood Association has brought in modular housing units from Altona and installed them on Sherbrooke and Langside. Benjamin Simcoe is the housing development coordinator. He says each suite is about 260 square feet, and he says this will allow them to work with people over a few months to transition into permanent housing. So we'll hear more about that. Also, more on the rare adoption in Churchill. A lone polar bear cub adopted by a polar bear mother that already had a cub. We're going to hear about why it's so rare and what it could mean for the polar bear population in Churchill. That's coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
I should also mention, due to that forecasted blizzard, all Rolling River School Division schools are closed today. Looking at the commute, Richard called the commuter line. He says that on southbound Archibald at Mission, there's a stalled car with its tire removed in the left lane. It is keeping folks from turning left. Backups, not too bad. We heard about that around half an hour ago. So if you have updates, we would love to hear from you. 204-788-3093. And speaking of commuting, Winnipeg Transit is bringing some changes just in time for the new winter schedule. Coming up, we'll hear from the manager of service development to find out what's changing and how the public played a part. Those stories and more still to come on Information Radio. Stay with us. World Report is next.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. Paul Anka has over 900 songs to his credit. He'll tell you about writing for folks like Buddy Holly and Frank Sinatra, growing up in Ottawa, and releasing new music in his 80s.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Zadie Smith shot onto the literary scene 25 years ago with her novel White Teeth. She has been an intellectual force ever since. We'll talk to Zadie Smith about empathy, social media, and what she's looking forward to about aging. It's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hundreds of people sing at the growing memorial on Sydney's Bondi Beach. The mourning for those killed in Sunday's attack during a Hanukkah celebration continues. And today, the suspected shooter is charged with 59 offenses. The 24-year-old is facing more than a dozen counts of murder. Georgie Smythe has the story from Sydney.
15 counts of murder, 40 counts of wounding with intent to murder, 1 count of displaying a prohibited terrorist symbol. These are just some of the offences Naveed Akram is facing after being formally charged in hospital while under police guard. Investigators say the terrorist attack was inspired by ISIS. On the same day, the parents of murdered 10-year-old girl Matilda came to the public memorial to place their daughter's shoes among the carpet of flowers and candles. Her father, Michael, says he tried to pull Matilda out of harm's way, but the shooting wouldn't stop.
She was in shock. She was in shock. She was telling me that it's hard to breathe, and I was holding her, and I was like, calm down, please.
Lawmakers will meet early next week to pass new emergency measures to further restrict gun ownership in the state New South Wales. Here's Premier Chris Minns.
We are proposing a bill to cap the number of firearms, to reclassify straight pull-up and pump-action shotguns, to look at reducing magazine capacity for shotguns.
The federal government is expected to follow suit soon. Crime scene tape is slowly coming down around the beachfront, but traditional New Year's celebrations here have been ruled out, and the status of other festive events at the iconic beach is unclear. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Sydney.
U.S. President Donald Trump is hitting the Maduro regime in Venezuela in new ways. Trump now says he is ordering a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers sailing into the country. Let's bring in Willie Lowry from our Washington bureau. Willie, what exactly is Trump threatening to do here?
A lot. President Donald Trump using the might of the U.S. military to attempt to cut Venezuela off from the rest of the world. In a lengthy post on social media, Trump said the country was completely surrounded by what he called the largest armada in the history of South America. Trump also ordered a, quote, total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. He accused the government of being a designated foreign terrorist organization and demanded that it return oil, land, and other assets that he alleges were stolen from the U.S. This appears to be a reference to when Caracas nationalized its oil industry in the mid-1970s. Before then, many U.S. companies operated in the country, which sits on the world's largest oil reserves.
The Trump administration has been putting huge pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro since September. Is this about drug trafficking and oil sanctions, or is the goal here really regime change?
Yeah, this is the latest escalation in a crescendo of hostile actions towards Venezuela that appears to be about all three. Trump has openly mused about regime change, and there is bipartisan dislike of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who the U.S. views as illegitimate. Let's take a listen to Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Republican Lindsey Graham.
If this is about regime change, it seems to me that the administration should say that's what it is and should come to Congress to ask for that authorization.
Maduro is not a legitimate president. If after all this, Maduro is still in power, that's the worst possible signal you could send to Russia, China, Iran.
Maduro, for his part, has made it clear that he does not want a war with the U.S., but has shown little interest in stepping down.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure.
Willie Lowry reporting from Washington. Canada's Secretary of State for Sport, Adam Van Koeverden, is standing behind Skate Canada. The national sport organization says it will no longer host major events in Alberta. It made that decision after the province banned transgender athletes from participating in women's sport.
We believe that a sports system that is rooted in fairness and welcoming and is inclusive for all athletes is the best path forward.
Van Koeverden says all Canadians should have the opportunity to play sports, including those in the transgender community. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says women and girls have the right to play competitive sports in a safe and fair environment against other biological females. Lawyers and advocates say children across Ontario are losing their legal immigration status. These youth have applied under Canada's humanitarian and compassionate immigration pathway, but they face decades-long processing times, and as Priscilla Kisong Kwong reports, some are becoming undocumented while they wait.
It really hit me like last year.
In his Ottawa home, surrounded by his basketball medals and trophies, John says he couldn't travel with his team to tournaments in the U.S. and can't get his driver's license. Just a toddler when he came to Canada, he's now 16 and undocumented. CBC is protecting John's real name because of deportation risks.
I mean, I couldn't really live the regular teenager life, so I felt like I was behind.
John is waiting for permanent residence under the humanitarian and compassionate stream. But this fall, the wait time ballooned from roughly 2 years to more than a decade because the government slashed its immigration levels to numbers lawyers call unprecedented. Heather Neufeld is an immigration lawyer. She says without status, people can't legally work, study, or access health care.
So instead of being a leader in protecting people, we're going to become just like the U.S. with an underclass of undocumented people.
Liz Okai is with the Child Welfare Immigration Center of Excellence. She wants the federal government to expedite vulnerable youth's applications,
so that they don't spend their entire formative years being in limbo and being in fear and hiding.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada says its processing times are transparent and up to date and puts the onus on applicants to request urgent processing. John says he worries for other youth like him.
It's a little heartbreaking, and I hope that it changes a little bit.
Priscilla Kizan Huang, CBC News, Ottawa.
Employees at the Louvre Museum will stay on strike. They walked off the job on Monday. The unionized workers are protesting chronic understaffing, infrastructure issues, and pay. The Louvre is the world's most visited museum. The strike follows the spectacular jewel heist in October, exposing security failings at the museum. The Louvre is only partially open today. Ticket holders will only be able to see the museum's masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Winged Victory sculpture. In Rome, subway construction means digging through 2,000 years of history beneath the city. Now, after more than a decade of work, 2 new stations are opening beside the Colosseum. As Megan Williams tells us, they are turning archaeology into part of Rome's daily commute.
70 years ago, when Rome built its first subway line, engineers plowed straight through ancient rooms lying just beneath the surface of the Eternal City. Newer lines now tunnel far below those layers of history to preserve them. Still, stations have to be built to connect with the underground, and every time construction begins, archaeology resurfaces, adding years of delays and staggering costs. But in the case of the new line at the Colosseum station, across from the ancient amphitheater, also the chance for something unique.
La sfida sicuramente è stata quella di realizzare questa stazione.
Engineer Marco Cervone says the city has pulled off a remarkable challenge, combining archaeology, architecture, and engineering into a global showcase, with the findings here of ancient wells and everyday objects, hairpins, oil lamps, knives, and statues, all displayed where passengers pass through.
Certo fa impressione.
It's striking to descend through centuries of history on the way to catch a train, says this student.
La stazione è molto bella.
This commuter calls it beautiful.
If only didn't take half a century to do one of these stations, that would be really nice.
The Colosseum station and another are part of a new line that runs through Rome's historic center. The city is hoping the next major stop under construction, just down the avenue from the Colosseum, will be done by 2032. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
Warner Brothers is telling its shareholders to reject a takeover bid from Paramount Skydance. It says the original deal with Netflix will be better for customers. Just over a week ago, Warner Brothers and Netflix reached a deal worth $27.75 a share. But then Paramount came in with a hostile bid offering $30 a share. Warner Brothers says Netflix has a deep portfolio of franchises. Stay tuned for the latest on that. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. .3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thanks for joining us this morning. Coming up on the show, a big winter storm is passing through southern Manitoba today. We will get all the details from a meteorologist coming up on the show. But first, Winnipeg Transit is bringing in some changes just in time for the new winter schedule. Coming up, we'll hear from the manager of service development to find out what's changing and how the public played a part. It's time now for news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, kids in care being sent to school in dirty clothes, going missing without anyone calling police. Those are just a few concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency placements. We're going to hear more. And within weeks, 6 young people experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg will soon have a place of their own. The Spence Neighborhood Association has brought in modular housing units from Altona and installed them on Sherbrooke and Langside. Now, these units are about 260 square feet. We're going to hear about this transitional housing coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Abby Adiemi is here with a look at the forecast. We're going to see some snow.
Yeah, a winter storm moving into the province. We're tracking it from the Parkland region, bringing dangerous conditions, and that will sweep province-wide. An orange level blizzard warning is in effect for the Winnipeg area, the Red River Valley region, down to the Westman and the Interlake region. Most of those regions will see about 25 centimeters of snow when the system comes through. And of course, along with that, you get some very windy conditions. We're talking about up to 90 kilometers of winds, creating whiteout conditions. So if you're traveling, especially tonight, it's going to be pretty difficult. For Winnipeg right now, 13 degrees, minus 13 rather. It's clear outside. Heavy snow starts sometime during your lunch break. Our highs would get to -4. Then that will be followed by full blizzard tonight. And then tomorrow, additional 10 centimeters of blowing snow is expected before conditions improve. For Brandon, Morden, Steinbach, we're looking at freezing rain coming your way. Roads will be icing up this afternoon, so it might be slick. Take it easy out there. And for the Whiteshell area, we're seeing that winter storm, heavy snow coming your way. But up north, you're just dealing with that deep freeze. The wind chill feels like -50 around Churchill and to the lake this morning. Winnipeg, we are at -13.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Show director Corey Funk is here. Corey, I guess we should appreciate what we have in the commute right now while we have it.
Yes, for sure. It's been overall fairly calm, but there are still actually a couple issues to keep an eye out for. So there has been a multi-vehicle collision at Leela and McPhillips, and that has blocked the entirety of westbound Leela right now. Emergency crews are on scene. Southbound McPhillips, the curb lane, as well as the eastbound turn lane on Leela is also blocked. And so southbound, let's say keep left if you're on McPhillips. Eastbound Leela, keep right to get around that. And if you're going westbound, you just want to find another way to get where you need to go because it's completely blocked on Leela. As well, got a call from Richard. Southbound Archibald at Mission. Stalled car in the left lane. Keep right to get around that. That car doesn't have a wheel. It's got a wheel missing, so it might be a while till it actually gets moved. So heads up there, might be slow going southbound Archibald this morning as well. As for the highways, they seem okay so far, but that will change very quickly as that system starts to move through western Manitoba a little bit later this morning, and then of course picks up through the afternoon and evening. So be careful if you're hitting the highways. Environment Canada says that travel is not advised if you don't have to, because it's going to get pretty bad out there on the highways. If you see anything going on right now though, you can give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Winnipeg Transit's winter schedule has come into effect and is bringing some concrete changes for riders based on feedback after the system overhaul in the summer. To explain what's changing and why, we're joined by Bjorn Radstrom. He's the Service Development Manager with Winnipeg Transit. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what changes are taking effect this week?
There's quite a few changes that went into effect this past Sunday. Some of the biggest ones that people will notice is the expanded late night service on the on-request routes. Right now, they mostly end at around 10 o'clock, but in 10 of the 12 zones, the hours are being extended until about 1:45 a.m. weekdays and Saturdays, and 12:45 a.m. on Sundays. And the other thing is we've rewritten a bunch of the schedules we knew were off and buses were consistently late on. Over the past few months, the most late routes have been the D12 Ellis, the D13 Sergeant, and then the D16. So we've completely rewritten those. It's a little bit too early to tell exactly how well it's working, but just anecdotally, I've been checking over the last couple of days on the D12 Ellis and the D13 Sergeant, actually in the D16 a few times, and the buses are much, much more on time than they were a week ago. So I'm happy about that.
I'm going to ask you more about the late routes and the changes and pass-ups. But first, I want to ask about the extension you mentioned of night service to several on-request zones. Why was this a priority?
That's something after we implemented the new network that we really heard clearly from people, is that the lack of late-night service was the biggest issue. Even if people really liked the new network, one of the things that they had trouble dealing with is that they couldn't get home from work if they were working late shifts or even if they were just out late. So by expanding the late night service on request right now in mid-December, we're doing things as quickly as we can. And then also in mid-April, provided the budget gets approved at council tomorrow, we'll be extending service till after midnight on 11 fixed routes.
CBC recently reported the number of pass-ups increased during September to November compared to last year. It's an increase of more than 20%. A reminder to our listeners, when we're talking about a pass-up, that's when a bus that is intended to stop at the stop you're waiting at passes you because it's full. Bjorn, what's your reaction to this data?
Yeah, it's obviously not ideal for having pass-ups, and especially more pass-ups than we had last year. So that just tells me that we have some additional work to do in figuring out exactly where we need to allocate our resources. And by allocating resources, what I'm meaning is what routes need to be more frequent and which routes can be slightly less frequent at different times of the day, and really where we need the service for to deal with the high passenger loads. This also tells us a bit about where we can move the articulated buses to. When we created the schedules for the summer and for the fall, it was our best estimate of what would be needed with the new network. But we're constantly going back and looking at what's been happening over the last few months. And as we write the new seasonal schedules, we're moving things around and moving around where those articulated buses are in order to make sure things are where they needed. But it's what we call an iterative process. It's never ending, and we'll always be working to try to make it better.
Now, the city told CBC that the pass-up numbers were actually worse before the pandemic compared to now, but that spokesperson didn't share ridership numbers for this September, October, and November. Do we have pass-up numbers from the last 3 months?
We have pass-up numbers from the last few months. So from September to November of this year, it was 6,971, but the same year in 2019 was 8,297. Now, ridership is a little bit lower still than it was back in 2019. I think we're somewhere around 10% less, but it's difficult to tell because of all the issues that we were having with the GPS on the buses that started in the second week of July. What we call our automatic passenger counter system. These are things that it's a little unit on the bus that counts people as they get on and off. Mm-hmm. We have that in about 20% of our bus fleet, and it's tied into the GPS. So when the GPS wasn't working, the automatic passenger counters weren't. So we've really only been collecting good data since second week of November or so. So really, we're going to have to start looking at the data from here forward because we don't have good data on our boardings for the earlier parts of this year.
If ridership you mentioned was lower, why might we be seeing more pass-ups when fewer people are riding the bus?
The pass-ups generally don't happen because of total ridership. They happen because of when there's a lot of people that are still going to one major destination, and those destinations we haven't seen a drop-off in any ridership, and that's the universities and high schools, and that's where pass-ups have always happened. You can even see it in the seasonality of it. There's always a big spike in September, and then it drops off in October, November, December, a big spike again in January. So it really tells you and it's from those schools, and the ridership at the schools appears to have not let up a lot, even though there's other areas where people are still figuring it out, and we've lost some riders with the new network, and we still haven't had a chance to gain new riders that have better service in their neighborhoods, but who haven't tried it out or haven't even realized that it's there yet.
It's been a big year for Winnipeg Transit. How satisfied are you with a new transit system as the year comes to a close?
Overall, I think I'm fairly satisfied with it. The biggest thing, though, that we want to push out to people is that everything really changed a lot. So don't fall into your old habit of walking to the same bus stop and just waiting for whatever bus comes there. And a lot of people that I've talked to, they're still doing that instead of trying out Navigo or the transit app for trip planning, or calling 311 if they don't really, if they're not tech savvy and don't want to do that themselves. Because a lot of people are taking the paths to get to work and to do their travel that really aren't the best ones that are available to them. And the only way to find that out is to try the trip planners. And see what works best for you, and not just kind of try to navigate it on your own, because things change so much that really everybody, including me, needs the help of those trip planners to figure out where they're going.
Bjorn, a big part of the transit overhaul was public feedback on this new system. What role did that play in the changes that have been made so far?
It played a very significant role, especially with the push for additional late night service. That's something that we couldn't have found out just through looking at the data that we collect. For things like the pass-ups and seeing where we need to move things around, and even looking at the on-time performance of those 3 routes I was talking about, those are things that we can look internally at the data that we collect to see how it's working. But for things like late night service, where people are saying the service isn't there when I need it, that's where we really need that feedback. And we really took that into account and then worked with council to develop this plan that is now going forward.
We've heard a lot of people criticizing the new transit system based on their experiences. What data will you be looking at to tell you objectively if the new system and the changes that have been made so far are working?
There's no single bit of data that we can say we're looking at this one thing. It has to be a combination of everything. So the feedback that we get from people that is hopefully very specific about, I want to make this type of trip, and it either really works well for me right now to the new network, or it doesn't work well, or they can suggest some changes. We read through all this information, we take that into account, and we'll be looking also at, now that we're getting better data, what the ridership numbers are like on each route, and see which ones are performing as expected, better than expected, worse than expected. And so literally that's the job of me and the whole group that I manage for the next several years. This is literally what we do, is analyzing the service and trying to make it better, and every single year coming up with proposals on what we might need to change in the route network, and also every season making these modifications to the schedule so things can work better.
Bjorn, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Bjorn Radstrom is the Service Development Manager with Winnipeg Transit. For a look at the new winter schedule and what else is new, you can head to info.winnipegtransit.com. That's info.winnipegtransit.com.
Just how does a plant become illegal? Terry O'Reilly is one toke over the line, leaving no stone unturned, exploring the history of cannabis and how it's marketed. From high-end retail stores now selling expensive paraphernalia to celebrities who have their own brands. On Under the Influence, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
We got a call on the commuter line. Mark called. He says that southbound Pembina, just outside the old Cambridge Hotel, it's getting very backed up. You are down to 2 lanes in that area for construction. Tim also called to say that Sherbrooke and Ellis, there are emergency vehicles, blocking the 2 right lanes. Sherbrooke and Ellis emergency vehicles are blocking the 2 right lanes. Westbound Leela at McPhillips is still completely blocked. We heard about that earlier in the program. Well, a blizzard is making its way to Manitoba as we speak. The weather system could bring lots of snow and even some freezing rain to parts of Manitoba, along with strong winds. For more details, we've reached Natalie Hazel, a warning preparedness meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. Good morning.
Hello.
So when will we see this system start making its way through the province?
Well, we've already got radar echoes reaching into the far southwestern corner of the province, with the bulk of that behind it still in Saskatchewan. For areas like the Red River Valley, we've got a couple more hours before things start to turn here. So we've got actually really pleasant weather for the next few hours, and then everything changes. So first we'll start to see snow with that risk of freezing rain, and that snow will be at times heavy, as you mentioned, and then the pressure gradient kind of tightens and the winds start to pick up. And so by sometime this evening, we should see very much reduced visibility in snow and blowing snow, hence the blizzard question.
Okay.
So Winnipeg's got a little bit of time before things really start, but it's already in the province in the far southwestern corner.
What could snow accumulation look like across the province when all is said and done?
So we are looking at anywhere from 10 to 20 centimeters, although locally there could be higher amounts. They're looking at radar is what's happening in Saskatchewan right now. There are bands of enhanced precipitation. So there are areas that are definitely going to get more than 20 centimeters. With the winds going to 70 to 90 kilometers an hour, it will be hard to measure that snow because it will be blown around and you'll have like areas that are swept dry, other areas that are massive drifts. So I don't know if we'll actually know.
Right, but we could see some tall snow drifts.
Sorry?
We could see some tall snow drifts.
I expect so,
okay.
Yes.
Freezing rain is also possible. What parts of Manitoba would be impacted by that?
So right now, the freezing rain warning is in the freezing rain, no, it is a warning. Okay, is in the southwestern corner and a lot of southern Manitoba, actually. I don't have an organized way of doing this.
I appreciate your work. You're doing this on the fly, and I'm really grateful for it.
It's all right. It's all right. We can do this. So Melita, Killarney, Verdon, Brandon, Altona, just south of Carmen, St. Malo, and by the time the storm makes it to the far eastern corner or southeastern corner of the province, things will have switched to snow.
Okay.
So we're not talking about freezing rain for, Lake of the Woods or areas east of the lakes, that type of thing. But yeah, all of those areas are in freezing rain warning. But you'll notice that a lot of the other areas not far from these areas have risk of freezing rain in the public forecast.
Oh, interesting.
So we're expecting freezing rain to be more significant south of Winnipeg, but Winnipeg could easily get freezing rain as well.
Natalie, we're, I think, just about a month into the new color-coded weather warning system.
Yes.
We're seeing a yellow winter storm warning in southeast Manitoba, some of those areas you were talking about, but much of southern Manitoba is under an orange blizzard warning. Can you remind us of the difference between those two colors?
Sure. So when we're looking at blizzards, the difference really is length of time. So if we had a yellow blizzard message, we would be talking about reduced visibility, sometimes to zero, for 6 to 24 hours. For orange, we'd be talking about 24 to 72 hours. So we are talking about a significant difference in terms of how long this event could last and how widespread the impacts are going to be.
Okay.
So, we're talking about dangerous or hazardous road or walkway conditions in both of them, travel, transport, transit delays in both yellow and orange, but the disruption is much more significant and much more widespread the higher up we go in the scale.
Natalie,
So
I really appreciate your time.
difference.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your time and these updates. I'm sure we'll be tracking this one for a while. Thank you.
You're welcome. For winter storm, slightly different hazards that we're talking about. Could be a combination of things, but again, it's the likelihood of these combined impacts and the length of time things are going to last. So, yellow winter storm for the moment, orange blizzard for the moment.
Okay.
Keep an eye on the forecast and on the alerts so that you're on top of things. And if you can avoid being on the road, like everyone has said up to now, please avoid being on the road.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay.
That is Natalie Hazel, warning preparedness meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. It's time for your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:31, it is -13. Clear right now, but as you just heard, a storm is coming. We're expecting snow, at times heavy, this afternoon. A high today of -4. Kids in care, going to school in dirty clothes and going missing without anyone calling police. Just a few concerns one CFS agency is raising about Manitoba's emergency placements. CBC News learned about these issues through a recent Freedom of Information request to Anamiki Osason, Child and Family Services. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says it's up to agencies to report problems with emergency placements so the province can then investigate.
It is incumbent on them to report it to the department so that one of our specialized licensing investigators can look at the concerns that are being raised.
Emergency placements are supposed to be stopgaps in Manitoba's child welfare system, but some kids end up staying a lot longer than the intended 30-day maximum. The Spence Neighborhood Association is almost ready to get 6 young people into transitional housing. 2 modular buildings were built in Altona. They were recently installed on their sites on Sherbrooke and Langside in Winnipeg. Benjamin Simcoe is the housing coordinator. He says they're installing front steps, water, and internet, which is needed for specialized locks. Simcoe says fridges, microwaves, and bedding are also on the way for the suites in both buildings.
Each have 3 transitional housing units in them, 260 square feet. Everything is electrical. Folks have everything that they need to live, and we will have our housing workers nearby providing wraparound supports, everything that somebody needs to get stable and get into permanent housing.
Simcoe expects people will live in the transitional suites for 3 to 6 months. He says workers will help with other supports like finding doctors, addiction counseling, and work. Simcoe hopes the units will be ready in early January. A rare phenomenon in Churchill. That's how researchers at Polar Bears International sum up the adoption of a lone polar bear cub. It appears to have been adopted by a female bear with another cub of her own. Dr. Evan Richardson is a polar bear scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He was in the field in March when the mother had 1 cub. Both had GPS tracking collars. When he returned in November, she had a second cub of roughly the same age as her first, without a collar. Richardson says it is only the 13th such case of cub adoption in the Western Hudson Bay.
We really think it's just because they're so maternally charged and such good mothers, and they just can't leave a cub crying on the tundra, so they pick them up and take them along with them.
Richardson says this is a good sign for Churchill's polar bear population. You can see photos of the bears on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, as you heard, we are bracing for a blizzard. Lots of snow and wind heading for southern Manitoba. An orange warning covers Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Pembina Valley, Brandon, Parkland, Riding Mountain, and the Interlake. The system first starts in the Parklands area this afternoon before hitting Winnipeg this evening. Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologist Brian Lusney says it'll be a doozy.
General kind of swath of 10 to 25 centimeters for most of the region. Red River Valley is going to be really close, 20 to 25 centimeters, kind of starting like later this afternoon and ending Thursday afternoon.
Now, it doesn't just stop at a blizzard warning. Western Manitoba also under a freezing rain warning today. In southeast Manitoba, it's a winter storm warning for places like Victoria Beach, Nopaming, Whiteshell, and Northwest Angle. Northern Manitoba, Churchill, Tuduli Lake, and Brochet under a cold warning with wind chill values approaching -50 over the coming day. Christmas is now just over a week away. And the Christmas Cheerboard has put out a plea for volunteer drivers. The Cheerboard says more than 5,000 hampers are still waiting in its warehouse, and help is needed to get them to families in need this holiday season. Anyone with a vehicle and some spare time is asked to drop by the warehouse at 133 Paramount Road You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. And a big thank you to the entire team here at CBC who helps put together the show. Associate producers Jennifer Dasso, Sierra Sanders, Zubina Ahmed, and Caitlin Gowerluck, a reporter. Community reporter Shannalee Vidal. Heather Wells, as you just heard, Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolou at our news desk. Corey Funk, our show director. Abby Adiami, our technician. Darren Morash is in charge of our YouTube live stream. Corey, an update on the commute here.
Westbound Leela at McPhillips entirely closed by emergency vehicles. There was a collision there earlier. Look out for that, as well as southbound Archibald at Mission. There's a stalled car in the far left lane. Keep right to get around that. Those highway conditions are good now, but they're going to deteriorate as that storm starts to roll through.
All right, and speaking of the storm, Abby.
Yeah, we're tracking that major Alberta clip already coming from the Parkland end. We're looking at it in the far southwestern corner of the province at this time. It's going to be bringing dangerous conditions. We have this orange level blizzard warning in effect for a chunk of southern Manitoba, along with blizzard and freezing rain coming our way. Some areas might get up to 25 centimeters of snow. Then that would come with that blowing snow also. The winds will be about 90 kilometers an hour. So you need to take it easy tonight and tomorrow morning.
All right, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Abby. Thank you to Leif Larson, our senior producer of audio, and Nellie Gonzalez, our show producer. I'm Chloe Friesen. The Current is next.